us something. Give us something. Come on. Oh, yes. We're bringing the fun. We're bringing the thunder. We are Thunder. Flesh and blood down under. Welcome, welcome, welcome. HD, Hayden Dale.
Needs no introduction.
Former Australian national champion.
I like you waited until you could say former Australian national champion before you got me on a show. So
100%.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It.
Well, you were supposed to be our guest right after Nats, but we wanted to get Nick Butcher on.
Rightly so.
I mean, we love him, but also fresh off his win, get him on. You didn't mind. You were a good sport about it.
Always.
Thank you.
No problem at all. I think, strike while the iron's hot.
That's what we thought. Also, he needs to strike while the iron's hot with Fab School. So I'm like, hey, if you're actually doing it, get on.
Yeah. Because
I knew that was why, the main reason I think why he didn't launch last Nats. Paul, I think this is the first guest that's actually has more clout than you and I in the Fab scene.
Well, look, I know exactly why I wanted Hayden here, and it's for one reason only.
Uh-oh.
There's a certain someone here that needs to be put in their place, and he goes by the name of Fluke and Box. I wanted Hayden to be here today because we need to convince this guy that draft is skill intensive. You heard him on the last pod with Philip. They were both saying, oh, it's luck. Come on, Hayden, back me up on this one. Let's convince John that draft truly is a skill-intensive format.
I think the problem, Paul, is that I know a lost cause when I see one, you know?
Hey, what did you come at Pro Tour?
I actually legitimately don't know. I went 8-6. I lost, I think, my last 2 rounds of Constructor to miss. I had like 2 wins.
I went 9-5. I think my opinion's more relevant, you know?
Yeah, how'd you get nationals?
Ooh.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Disgustingly terrible.
Look,
it was bad.
One result does not define
100%.
the player, you know?
100%.
It's so important.
Well, that's why you're considered one of the best, is you're consistent. You don't have to win every event to be consistent, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, you don't have to win every event to prove you're good.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
you're consistently good.
You can look at, I think Michael Hamilton is undisputedly one of, if not the best player in the world right now. And, you know, he's yet to top 8 a Pro Tour, you know. He's won 2 coins. It's not like he hasn't won stuff, but you look at he collected 2 PTIs at Lille, you know.
So have you played against Michael in a sanctioned game of Flesh and Blood?
I have. I have actually. The first time I ever found my first introduction to Michael was I sat down at round 4, I want to say, of the calling in Orlando. So when I flew over to the US last November, great opportunity to meet up with Brendan, my co-host, and play that calling over there. I think there was about 4 or 5 international players because obviously travel had only really just started. Literally, I think Australia had opened the borders up a week earlier, and I made the call to go. And I sat down round 4, no clue who this guy is. Introduce, say hello, and play. And he's playing Ultim, and I'm playing the Lightning Briar deck of that weekend, the kind of breakout deck. And I've played this matchup before. I'm like, yeah, I know this matchup. It's fine. I've practiced this matchup. And then we get to turn 5 or 6. And I'm like, he's countering every play I make. Not only does he playing his side of the matchup so well, he's also playing my side of the matchup. And I was just so impressed. I went to Brendan afterwards. We had, in the end, quite a tight game. But for the last 4 or 5 turns of the game, I knew I couldn't win, and Michael knew I couldn't win. And I went to Brendan afterwards, and I just said, that's the best player. That's one of the first times in this game I felt truly, completely and utterly outplayed. I just had no play in that game. And then I also spent some time. I played a few games against Michael in testing for PT1, although I wasn't on the same schedule as him, unfortunately. So I think I got to play 2 or 3 games. But just a great person as well. One of the nicest people, and also phenomenal
very
player.
humble.
Yes.
So you said turn 4 and 5 is when it sort of hit you like, holy hell, this guy's amazing. Can you kind of articulate that? What was he doing that would be different to the average Joe? Was there anything in particular that sort of struck you and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing at this game?
Yeah. I think in this game, when you sit down and play someone, especially in a matchup like Aggro versus Control, a lot of the time you'll find either side of the table. So I can go and watch a match and I can watch 2 players play Aggro, in control, and I can tell usually the majority of people just play their side of the matchup. They know the plan well. They know, okay, I want to play this way into control. I want to sneak damage in with Rosetta Thorn or whatever, and that's my plan. And the player on the other side goes, I don't want to take damage. I want to soak up as much damage as possible. And at some point in the game, I'm going to start swinging my hammer, ice fused, right? Like with an ice card. It goes to like turn 4, and Michael was like, I was pitch stacking for like an in game, and Michael like just immediately notices it, and then just on turn 5 like pressures, knowing that I'm going to try and pitch stack a Stinger Sorcery to like set this up. So he ends up ice reacting on a first attack, which just no one does playing Ultim, and I would never expect anyone to do. Like I'd seen that play before, but only in testing because we knew it was good against us, and he does it, and I'm just like, okay, this is gonna.
So he forced you to put one of your cards, like you had cards in hand more than one, because ice reactors usually they want to get rid of your arsenal, right?
Yeah. But so instead of just making me get rid of my arsenal, he made me start to make decisions about my whole turn, which is like generally not as good playing Oldham because you want to give them as little information as possible, whereas this gives you lots of information, but actually kind of denies this kind of pitch stacking that you want to do.
Because you're no longer. What's the word? It's not. You've calculated what you're doing.
Yeah.
And now it may not be the best idea to pitch stack that way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very. I remember, unfortunately for Michael, when he had a big win on camera, it was against Fino Black, and Fino got a lot of the publicity.
Because of the misplay.
Yeah. But
Michael played that game.
But anyone watching that matchup, usually it's like because Prism and Fino's a very good player.
Yeah.
And you watch, he was not playing a normal Starvo deck. He was pitch stacking. He did the whole Eisenloft.
Yep.
It was.
Set
I
up
was
his open
watching.
odds.
I'd never, because I don't test at the level you do. I'd never seen some of the stuff he was doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, I've never seen a Starvo play that way. Because again, most people on Starvo, they're like draw 4, hopefully confuse Arsenal or Pulse if you get one. This guy was not playing that. He knew the deck is high rolly, but then he fine tuned it to where he also was in full control.
Yeah, he didn't play. He as people like to say, the Crayons build. Like he was literally playing in a matchup he knows that is going to be grindy.
Yes.
Plays to an immaculate second cycle, which is.
Did you watch that game, Paul?
No.
If you want to see,
that's classic Fab. Like,
yeah.
Yes, it's meme worthy because Fino missed his tunic, but he wouldn't have won if he didn't miss his tunic.
Yeah.
If you watched that game,
and I mean it's a game that is, I think, especially with the way Michael was playing the deck, traditionally should be favoured to Prism, but I think the way that Michael played, he gave himself every opportunity. His I think it's either his quarterfinals or semifinals match in that event where he plays into Cody Williams playing Chain is just like one of the best like examples I would show of someone playing to a very particular strategy. The thing I think you can I point to people who like Michael, like Sasha, I think are two of the best players in the world, and they play atypical strategies. They understand how to go one step beyond what people are expecting and how to combat that. And those are the kind of strategies that I think come out of that, which is really cool to see.
So when you test with people like Sasha and Michael, if you do, if they're playing atypical strategies, are they actually showing everything in testing? I'm always curious because I don't test. Like Talishar now is like a way to test, but it's not really because a lot of people just play crappy decks, unfortunately. But when you're testing at a high level, like it's people that are world ranked and going to worlds, and are you ever actually playing your real deck?
Yeah, all the time. I would say the real deck probably doesn't come about until the last sort of week or two because you're trying to refine and find all these things. I think I've never gone to an event, any event actually, that
100% sure.
Of what my list is going to look like. I would probably say Nationals that I won, funnily enough, was probably the most locked in. I was probably locked into the deck about 3 weeks before. I was locked into the exact, I think maybe bar one card change that we ended up changing. 5 days before. But PT1, I swapped the deck the day before. The list wasn't locked in until midnight that night. We went to submit the deck list or whatever. It was like
the Kano.
Yeah. PT2, the deck list wasn't locked in until about 2 hours
I know, because I had to source you some cards the day before.
Yeah.
I was running around asking anyone.
Thank you so much as well. Yeah. It was, I wish I performed better, but
we got them all in the end.
So I think that's, and then in terms of like people, if you're in a group testing and you've decided that you're going to test these people, it's no holds barred. Like probably the more interesting thing with someone like a Sasha, I can't speak for Michael because I haven't spent much time with Michael. Like I said, when he was in the kind of wider testing group that I was in, in PT1, we never had any crossover, just time zones.
Yeah.
But so I can talk for, I guess, my experience with like someone like Sasha is I'm often just a punching bag, to be honest. You know, like while I think I'm a pretty decent deck builder, he's like a step above, right, in the way that he approaches the game, and he needs to try, I guess, like these theories and these strategies out, and you know, I might bring a strategy to the table at some point, and then that's probably something that like someone like a Sasha would process, or maybe if I'm not working with a Sasha, it's something that I think you always have someone in that kind of role probably in these testing teams. I think Nick is probably that for. I'm just speculating, but I think based on what I know,
he's
Nick,
definitely built that dash deck, the original undefeated one. That was all him.
I think he's coming up with a lot of these strategies, and I think you can say the same of certain people in certain groups around the world. So
to us scrubs that don't top anything, it's Philip Mackay. He helps the lower end people. No, he really. By the way, of all the people in Flesh and Blood, especially in Sydney, he's probably the only person who's a very good player. They can go, hey man, like, can you help me build a Kasai deck for this weekend?
Yeah.
And he'll just throw cards together,
Yeah,
and
he's a
he's very
theory-based
good
person
off.
as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's very good, very friendly. Like, I never expected him because my first impression of him wasn't that he's like super friendly. Yeah, you were there, but he's very, very giving, like of his time for sure.
For sure, I think it's you've got some really talented, really really talented technical players in this game, and then you've got some people who are amazing theory crafters. Those don't always line up, and then you have a few golden eggs that are both. And I think talked about some of those just before, but yeah.
You mentioned the C word, crayons.
Oh,
now I want to.
I was quoting what people on this.
Yeah,
podcast
exactly.
said.
So I want to circle back to. I want to get your thoughts. I want to go big picture. Do you think, Hayden, when people say that, like whether you just said Starvo, people saying, "Oh, crayons builds," or Briar crayons, do you think that's like almost passive aggressive or dismissive, or because my feeling is to play any of these decks at a true high level, like you saw Michael Hammond playing that Stravo deck, it's anything but crayons.
Yep.
Like if you want to, like, what do you think of this whole, vernacular, oh, crayons doesn't take any skill, anyone can do it? Like, do you think there's anything to that, or do you think all decks require a certain amount of skill to perform well at, or do you think, no, there is true crayon decks that you can just shut your eyes and, swing into a top 8? Like,
do you want my honest opinion?
yeah, for sure. Well, that's what we do here on Thunder.
I figured I was just leading the witness a bit there. I think those comments are a little bit senseless, to be honest. I don't really understand why people say things like that. I get to an extent what people are trying to say, and what I think I guess what they mean is like, it's boring. It's like it's A plus B. Like it's very straightforward. And yeah, there are those builds of decks out there. But I would say when you go and look at what does well at a high level, it's people taking the raw power of those strategies and harnessing them and turning them into much, much, much more than that. Like Michael Hampton playing Starvo. Like I'll even point to the Sasha and the Kano deck that he built. Even I think what we saw with
Tariq on Redline Briar.
Yeah. I think you can go and say like here's the strategy, but like I'll use the deck that I played at the PT and Nationals for example. I played Briar, and I think it's Briar is inherently very powerful. You have access to what I think are 3 of, if not the most, then probably top 5 most powerful cards currently printed and available legal to play in the form of Channelmount Heroic, Spellbone Creepers, and Rosetta Thorn. But then how do you actually approach that? And yeah, you can just go, okay, I just try and play 0 for 4s and I try and lay my Channelmount Heroics. But there is ways to go beyond that, and you can get to, there are definitely like strategies that are a lot more straightforward and easy to play. But okay, you play an easy, straightforward strategy, and then you play into someone, because it's straightforward and easy to play, you play into someone on, say, a control deck who knows exactly how you're going to play, because it is a quote unquote more straightforward. Yeah, more predictable. I think it's a better term. Then you're going to find that that's a lot harder game to play, and you need to have these a bit more ingenuity about your game plans and what you're going to do. So I think, yeah, I get it. There is decks that are a little bit easier to play and you can perform with them, but it's only part of the narrative, I think. And I think it's a little bit, I think most of the people that I've heard say it, and I respect those people, it's more just like a throwaway of like, it's Phil sharing his poem, like there's a funny side to it as well, which I appreciate. But I think I've also heard some people really double down, triple down, quadruple down on those comments, and I think they're trying to simplify the game too much. And I think for the most part, those people's voices kind of get lost anyway, because majority of people will, just say it's not true. But yeah,
one thing is, 2 comments. One is Briar is a good deck, right? and very quite simple to pilot, especially if you're running like snappies and things, right?
Yep.
No, but you can make that a very simple.
For sure.
I find Rhino lines more complicated than Briar lines in most cases. You know what I mean? Because Rhino, there's actually 2 or 3 viable choices sometimes. Or Dory's the same. When do I react? Do I even play this? Or I find that harder than Briar, where you just dump. I think that's what it is decks that just pretty much want to dump.
Hands play
dump
themselves
the hand,
sometimes.
right? Sometimes, but that doesn't make it a good deck in and of itself, because in the mirror, if you haven't thought one step ahead, you're just rolling a dice. Do you know what I mean? While Michael Hamilton's Starvo deck was also beating all the Starvos and had a very good game plan into Prism, he was not basing his game plan on the power level of the deck alone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have got unlucky maybe during the day and not won that calling. Like, that's a chance. But here's the other side of the coin. Starvo has 1,500 fucking Living Legend points.
That's true.
So that's the viable...
The argument.
I think how people word it might be incorrect. I don't think that deck was a good design. That's
agree.
But it's also obvious.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But most of the other decks haven't been that. Like, Chain was very
Polarizing,
strong,
right?
but Chain takes, I think, quite a bit more skill to pilot than Starvo did.
It's the lines. Like, I think a way that I like to put it is that a deck. So you talked about like Rhino versus Briar, right? And the lines being more complicated in Rhino. I think for the majority of time, I would say that is somewhat true. But the way I like to look at it is like, it's what do you get punished for? So I would say not choosing the right line in Rhino versus Briar can punish you more because of the inherent power of the deck.
It's too low to afford not perfect play.
Yeah, and I think, you can, as a smart player who wants to do well, I think you're in a really good spot if you're going to go and harness the best deck in the format. Yes, you have to go beyond that in terms of, what next.
To actually
people
perform, yeah.
But why handicap yourself? I know you've talked about this in a conversation, I think if you don't mind me saying, that you had with Matt Fox about, he said to you, don't handicap yourself, just play the best deck and go from there. And I think that's my kind of motto, I think, in any format is I have to have a really good reason to not just play the best deck in the format.
I do that to myself. I never play the best deck.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I borrowed your Prism list. I don't know if you remember ProQuest season.
Yes,
Because I was on Dory and just wasn't going anywhere. And I didn't know how to play it. And I did way better than Dory. No, but I did way better. I was beating Oldhams. And I was like, oh.
But that's format, right? That can be format. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a complicated, I think, piece of the game that sometimes gets oversimplified, and sometimes rightly so gets simplified. But it's I don't think it's black and white.
Keep talking. I'm gonna put the blind down
because we've got Paul being blinded by the light.
So let's talk about I want to get your opinion on variance. When it comes to Flesh and Blood, especially Constructed, are you happy with how much variance there is in the game? Do you think it is at a sweet spot? Or do you think there's a little bit too much, a little bit, what's your thoughts on that?
It's hard because I think it's been a journey for Flesh and Blood where we started with a game that was very low variance, because the power level was really throttled. So you had a game that to start with didn't have much inherent variance in the design of the game.
You're gonna have to move.
I'm gonna have to move. It's all right. I will reposition.
I'll keep going on my little variance spiel. So, where it's at now, I think on the journey, I do think that this format seems to be in a pretty good spot. We're getting to a point where it seems like defending does seem to matter a little bit, which I think for the last 3 formats, as we, ourselves on Arsenal Pass, we've previewed the format and gone, oh, it looks like blocking might be a bit more important in this format, and then it never really ends up being that way. It's all about what's the most powerful thing you can do. And I think the power level is starting to be throttled back a little bit with Uprising and with Living Legend of Chain, Prism, Starvo. I think, you probably point to Briar, Oldham being maybe the 2 most inherently powerful heroes left.
Yeah, but Briar, I think Oldham's a problem, but I think it's one of those decks that is not as fun to play, so you still don't see it as a problem. But Briar doesn't... Like, the fact that I can beat Briar on Dory makes me feel like, okay, it's strong, but they really are, like, weaknesses. A lot of Briar decks are still relying on that. It's like a combo deck nearly. You're relying on seeing a channel mount. If they're stuck in the bottom half of your deck into another aggro match, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, you want to talk about variance.
Because other decks are way more consistent than Briar. The pop-off turn on Fi does not need you to draw one of 3 cards in your deck.
Art of War's pretty good.
But it doesn't require it.
Sure.
Spreading Flames is just as good. Now you got 6 very good.
But that's where I think, going back to that previous point, talking about before about how do you harness, you take a raw strategy of Channel Heroic being super powerful. What do you do? Well, kind of one of our answers at the PT was play explosive growth. It's kind of like an extra Channel Heroic. Play a deck that can utilize Force of Nature, which is another really powerful card. Give yourself more opportunities to
creepers.
Have powerful, and have powerful turns. But where variance is right now, I mean, there's some of the game, and I'm glad. I think no variance would suck. I think if you play aggressive mirrors in this current format, that's where you feel variance the most, because the things you talked about, where are your Art of Wars, where are your Channel Heroics, I haven't drawn any Mothering Skies plus Shrills in this game. Variance is, I think, always going to be there, and I think that's good. Over a shorter game, you're going to feel it more. That's why Blitz always gets pointed to as like, it's not skill intensive. It's like the short form format, it's such a punt sometimes. But reality, it's just because it's short form, and your decisions matter just as much, if not more.
I think they matter more in Blitz. One misplay, when to break your equipment is probably the biggest one in Blitz. Is like saving that one extra turn and having to block with it, and you know what I mean, or
that one life
putting
point.
That pressure before, or sometimes like cracking courage on Warrior when it's on full. Block because of tempo and pressure is way more. That's how you lose games in Blitz.
Those decisions are great as well. Yeah. So
like when we did the Blitz gauntlet, like Paul has no way to control me getting the Tommel tie out. You know what I mean? Like in a CC game, he was playing that perfectly. In Blitz, it's like that's the whole game. Is that one turn where I got a bit lucky? Yeah. He had Lumina, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think, just because I came from Magic, like obviously Flesh and Blood compared to Magic, the variance is, drastically different.
Very different.
Drastically different. So I think there's that fine line. I've always liked where it has. It obviously has changed a lot since I got into the game. I will not change a lot, somewhat maybe. But I think there's that fine line where maybe LSS are in that tough spot to appease, some of the, great minds that want more decision points, or longer games, which means obviously less variance. But the less variance you have in a game, generally speaking, you're going to close the doors on Timmys, and the majority of your player base are actually Timmys. Like if you really close it out,
you've got to be careful.
You have to be careful, because I've found just in the local scene with friends of ours, mutual friends, don't need to say any names, but I'm sure there's listeners out here, they probably have the same issues in their community. I found a lot of people that stop playing the game is because they find that they don't get those free wins, or they don't get that luck, or it really is they just can't win at certain points, and it frustrates them, especially if they come from other card games that have more variance, where they can rock up and put in less thought and get wins and things like that. And there's many people that I could name that have sort of drifted away from Fab, and I know it's because of the variance factor. They're just kind of over it, they're just like, these decision trees, or I can't see myself getting better. What can I do to win these matchups or these games? And they can't seem to work it out, and they just get disgruntled, disheartened, and the rest is history. Yeah,
it can go both ways, right? It can go the way of like, variance is so bad, to no variance is bad. And I want to put this point out there, because I think it's one that I've stuck to very firmly, and I've said it on other podcasts and on our platforms, is that I think people talk about Prism being bad for the game, and I think Prism was one of the best heroes we've had for the game. And you can say Spectra is not great design, and I think that's fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But I actually think that a hero like Prism being there that forces decks to actually have this 80-20, 90-10 matchup is good. Yeah. People say that's not good. Having a 90-10, having an 80-20, having a close to unwinnable matchup is never good for a game. I disagree. I think that builds metas, and that causes metagaming to be much more of a thing. If you have too many decks that are close to 50-50, what does it matter? You just play the hero
that actually feels more random. Like it feels like more variance.
Yeah,
because if everything's a 50-50, then everything is like, what I'm saying is, if it's 50-50 actually, it's always going to feel like you could have won and didn't. Yeah. While like every time I've beaten Prism on Dory, that's a real win. Like you cannot take that shit away from. Do you know what I mean? I know that's a 20-80, and I got there. Yeah. And it's always that micro decision. Do you know what I mean? Like Yeah,
you
I'll move
had
you.
to work for that game.
Oh, 100%. Like, I still have yet to beat Oldham on Dory, but I also lack the skill it takes, because you do have to pitch stack to do that, and you actually have to block a lot and get to the point where you can do something that they can't answer, like a 4-swing double twin. Do you know what I mean? I don't have
crazy turn.
Yes, you can do. The one time I did it was actually the original Nats last chance qualifier. Matt Rogers did a video with me, built a deck for me. Time snaps. He said, just set up against Oldham, and I did it. And I actually forgot I could swing a 4th time, and I lost the game. This is the one time I came that close to actually killing Oldham on Dory.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Well, you basically won.
No, I did the combo.
Yeah,
I didn't win, because misplay is a misplay, right? But
basically,
it was as close as I've been.
I would, and I just think so to back to your point, I think the last thing I'll kind of say on that is that the closer you get to basically a hero not mattering, or I guess in terms of it's like, I have 55 in this matchup versus 65 play this hero, and there's a slight bit of metagaming, but everything's close to 50-50. You just end up with the best players continuing to rise to the top, which, great, they're the best players, right? And they deserve that. But
at a casual level, that's terrible.
Right, at a casual level, it's terrible. But also, even at a competitive level, after a point, because I will always, I guess I'm a bit biased, always take from a competitive standpoint, is like, it gets boring. If someone goes, hey, I've got tickets to go and see this golf open, and it's like, if I know that the same player is going to win every single time, why am, or a tennis match might be a better example. It's like, hey, let's go and watch Rafael Nadal versus X person that you don't know, but is like, 6th seed in the tournament or something. It's like, well, 2 seed beats 6 seed every time. But that's not true. Nadal can get injured. Nadal can be maybe off form. This player could have the game of their lives. The rub of the green can go their way. The chalk splits a different way when the ball hits. It's like that sport has less variance in it. But, if you're starting to get to a point where you're getting to that margin, I don't think it's enjoyable.
This is a really side example, but I don't know if you know, Gordon Ryan is basically the god in jiu-jitsu. He's 58 whatever wins in a row now. He just took out the most decorated grappler of all time, made him look like he just started grappling. You know what I mean? To a point, it's boring to watch when you know he's going to win. Does it make sense? Like,
yeah, I mean,
he literally hasn't dropped a match in so long, but it's so dominant that you're like, can we get like, will Brock Lesnar start doing jiu-jitsu? Like, you know what I mean? You just want to see a challenge. You want to see a challenge. You also, underdogs are always more fun to watch. Like, it's fun to watch, especially on stream. Everyone got pumped about Rhino winning a Nats because it's not supposed to win. It's, I'd
but it can
just
win.
pick where you want to sit.
I'm going to go this way.
Which way? The sun's going that way. So
yeah, I'll go this way. That's better because it's going that way. So another question, just things I want to talk to you about in general. Just have conversations about. Look, I think, and I've thought this for a while, that Classic Constructed, to me, it's a rotating format. Okay, whether you want to believe it or not, I think it is. Okay, I really think it is. It's not an eternal format. I think the Living Legend format eventually will be the eternal format. But I think at the moment, like Classic Constructed appears to me to be a rotating format, which is good, which is fine. But no, I don't have any issues with that at all. So I'd like to hear your opinions on that, but also amount of heroes in Classic Constructed. That's something I'm very interested in. Like me being a Timmy, I'd like to see 50 heroes in Classic Constructed. I would love that because I think it breeds more innovation, rogue decks. It increases variance. People can just come out of nowhere and have a lucky read on the meta and just nail it. Similar to what we saw in big modern tournaments, you could get a bit spicy in with that sort of stuff. So, what are your thoughts? Would you like to? A, what do you think about Classic Constructed? Do you think it is a rotating format? And B, what do you think the perfect or, this optimal size of heroes in the format? Do you think like the 15 to 20 small and keep it rotating? Or do you think we should, grow it into sort of like a 50 hero format?
I think inherently it is a rotating format, but not in the way that people think of rotating formats, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't rotate by set. Correct. And I think that's a question that's come up, and I know Brendan's pretty passionate about this, that he thinks that there should be set-based rotation in Flesh and Blood. I'm not on that page. I think that if Living Legend is done right, that is a great way to rotate and keep a format. Not only
you end up with a format with 100 heroes in it.
Well, in theory, I guess if you go set by set, you just naturally take heroes out, right? Like,
sure.
Welcome to Wraith rotates out next year because it's had its 3 years or whatever it is. I'm not a fan of that because I think the way that they've built this game is fundamentally from an eternal standpoint to a degree. And they've got this base of cards. Like I've said this to a lot of people. Like you look at the generic power level of Welcome to Wraith and Arcane Rising, and people are always like, oh, you know, they printed Sync Blow and they printed Fate for Sin. It's like how many 0/4 defense reactions they can print, and that was why people complained about Lightning Briar, right? Like, you know, this is bad. Now imagine 2 years when there's more 0/4s. They don't have to print more 0/4s. That's the thing is they can class tie them.
Yeah.
But you look at Arcane Rising and Welcome to Wraith. Those are the base power of your generics. Majority of the
Still
most
are.
powerful, exactly the majority of the most powerful generics come from those sets and are going to continue to be coming from those sets. So I think rotation doesn't quite work in that sort of light. But I think what does work is, in theory, Living Legend. I think, you know, we've had a few hiccups and it hasn't. You know, there's a few things I think they could still improve. But I think the fundamental concept of Living Legend can work and can be the way to rotate in this game and create freshness alongside new sets without having to rotate sets out. So I think that is what rotation should continue to and look like, and I think there's some work there. But I think you're seeing it now, right? You see the meta shift, Prison goes, boom, you know, these ice heroes, control heroes are so much more viable, and you know,
So is Wizard.
Right.
In general.
Yeah, and we haven't even had a new set yet, right? And you've already got this shift in the meta and a change, but you still allow people at a grassroots level to play the heroes they've been playing.
I
Rhino
would
can still
hate if
Rhino.
nothing in WTR is even close to Living Legend. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's it would be terrible if they just rotated out. It'd be like it would affect deck building a lot more, but it would. So let's step back. They just changed the Living Legend.
Yeah.
And I think the argument was this Eternal format is it's going too quick.
Yeah.
Which means I read that as their goal is to increase the amount of heroes. They don't want heroes retiring quicker than they're printing them, or even at the same level. I think they want the game to eventually, like if we're at 20 playable heroes now, I think the way they envision
the year
it,
after 23, 24.
that's how they want it to be. That's now whether that's good or not.
Yeah.
As long as they keep the base design, so it feels like what they did in Uprising, they've kept the power level closer to like Monarch Tales felt like a big jump up. The new heroes feel like they're still Dory versus Fi does not feel backbreaking the way like
Briar
Chain versus Dory feels or Old and you know what I mean? There's a big difference in power level there. I know you still have Bolton and Levia, which are probably a step under, but the sheer power level of those two sets compared, like that's where all the bans are. But that brings me to another point. Bans themselves are the soft rotation. Like every set release also comes with the bans and restricted. So when they want to rotate something, they're also doing it per set.
Yeah, I mean you can balance the health of a format in any given season or between season to season with bans, right? But I think you just said, you know, you feel like they're wanting to add heroes, and to Paul's second part of the question is, do I think more heroes is that good? I don't think it necessarily is. I think it's a balance, like you were saying. You know, great for variance, great for I guess people who want to spike events and try something different and be off the beaten track, right? I think that's really important, and I think I think we've seen that happen. I mean, we saw 5 Wizards in this Nationals top 8. We saw 2 Kanos in the first PT top 8. I think probably somewhere between. So we're at 15 heroes at the moment. I think 20 around 20 probably makes sense. Somewhere floating between 15 to 22. I think.
What would the game look like at 50?
It sounds unmanageable to me, to be honest. It sounds like you need a different format at that point. It sounds unmanageable because, first of all, you've got, I think, too much to balance from a development standpoint when they're bringing sets in. So let's just say they slowed everything down and Briar doesn't live in Legend for 2 years because this isn't going to happen. But the way they slowed it down. It's like, okay, now we have to continue to think about Briar for the next 2 years in our set design, as opposed to, okay, Briar rotates out and we're focused on Classic Constructor. We don't have to balance.
And Rosetta Thorn, I think it's way more important than Briar.
Sure, potentially. I mean,
it would change how Rune Blades function.
Sure, yeah. And I think so many arguments about Rosetta Thorn. I think it's kind of good for the game because I think if you don't have it right now, I mean, your aggro is fine. I don't think much else. But probably just to, I guess, wrap up on that, I think I'd like to see somewhere between 15 to 25 at max and float around there and spike and then come back down. And I think Living Legend, my interpretation of why they changed Living Legend points is it needed to be changed because more events are coming in and you actually sustainably it was not feasible to continue another year at that rate. But also a little bit because of just slow it down a little bit. But again, I think there's another change to Living Legend that probably should happen at some point, which is you work on a fixed point system so that the amount of events, variable, grow, shrink, doesn't matter. You're still running on a similar timeline, and the best decks continue to, the
rotate
the
out.
cream rises to the top, and you move through.
I sort of want to draw back to what you said about, brilliant deck builders like Sasha's and the like. And in my mind, we really haven't had breakout deck builders, especially on massive Flesh and Blood, because the game's just not old enough. There's not a big enough pool of cards. Like, the more cards there are in the game, the more tools that are in the toolbox for the deck builders. Yeah. And that's why in my mind, would like to see more heroes. I'm not saying 50, but because an analogy I could draw would be with Death Shadow in Modern. The card was in print for 10 years. Yep. For 10 years, the card was hanging around and no one brewed with it. And then one day, someone was like, oh, I can do something with this.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to crush the format. And I thought, well, that might be cool with Flesh and Blood, that you have a hero that's been in the format for 8 years, hasn't done anything, and then someone revisits it, takes a long, hard look at it, comes out of nowhere and just crushes, a call in and a pro tool with it, or something like that. I don't know. Like,
KCI
for me,
comes out and
I find that I romanticize. Being a Timmy, they're the things that I think are somewhat healthy for the game, to be honest.
I think that's really good for the game. But my kind of counterpoint would be, why do you need more heroes for that? Why not just card pool in general?
Yeah,
because I do think that the limited card pool right now is a bit of a deterrent for deck builders, and I think there's only so many ways you can go. And I think a good example is that no one broke it at PT2. I think, and this might be a bit biased, but I think like the Kano builds we saw came close to breaking it at PT1. Every other build for the most part, it was iterations on the current chain we saw, it was iterations on the Star, it was iterations on the Prism. Kano was like, the one that kind of...
Well, people didn't have AB pack, did they?
No.
As a rule, you weren't seeing an AB3 in every matchup.
Yeah, and the list, I think, particularly the list that we played, looked very, very different. Even Alex had like a somewhat different to what we'd seen traditionally, and, using something like Potion of Deja Vu and the breakout of Wildfire. But we didn't see that at PT2, and I think a big part of that, and this is from my personal experience, is that there just isn't the cards there to do it. And probably, and that's why I say 15 feels on the lower side of heroes. I would be happy seeing 18, 19, but I think, if I felt at PT1 and even maybe like ProQuest season, so many heroes, and I think that's a good thing, but also some of them just don't get a look in. And I think if you continue to print heroes at a very rapid rate and introduce them, none of those heroes are going to get a look in. So I think to your point about, a hero that's something that's been around for 8 years, if the release schedule keeps going, Azalea's never going to get a look in. Bolton's never going to get a look in. So I actually think I would say Cardpool is the potential way to do it.
So a bit more depth.
Yeah, a bit more depth rather than breadth, I think.
Well, I think it's a balance between the two. Like, not releasing more heroes than you can handle with the current card pool.
Yeah.
Like, if you release a new Shadow set, it'll have new heroes.
Yeah.
But it'll also hopefully bring Levia up.
Yeah.
But what you don't want is like the new hero, the new Shadow hero is just better than Levia anyway. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Although I still think the hero is a card, like, it's just that extra it's like a permanent, same as equipment. Equipment is way more meta changing than a card is, because it has a bigger impact in the game. Like, if there was a new replacement to Tunic, the meta will change potentially, because some decks will just get what they need. But look, actually, chess pieces are the ones that like Barkbone strapping.
Head pieces are pretty good.
Yeah. That's, I think, even like Crown of Providence, I think it's made a big impact on running Command and Conquer versus other cards. It's like, wait, some people have to get out of Command and Conquer for free.
With variants, things like that. Yeah. The one thing I would say about that is that because the card pools are tied to those heroes, it's not just the text box on those heroes. It is a pretty big impact. But just going back to that last point, like, an analogy I like to use is like, if you recommend a TV show to someone, right, and it's got 2 seasons and 8 episodes per season, it's a lot easier to sell someone on that than it is to sell them on, Grey's Anatomy, 20 seasons, 24 episodes a season.
This is why I don't watch anime. I never did as a kid.
You should watch Bleach.
People go like, oh, Dragon Ball's great, and you start watching, like, you know what, this is, like, I don't mind watching that while I work. I don't have to pay a lot of attention. And you're like, wait, how many seasons? Like 104 seasons. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to not watch that.
It's not a perfect analogy, but I think I do think that there is danger of burnout if you have too much, between collectors, between players, between new players, so I think there is this, I truly do believe there is a sweet spot when it comes to Living Legend, hero releases, and Cardpool releases, and even to the extent talents and how far you go with talents.
I thought this was a big complaint with Magic, where too many it's a lot every year comes out for you to ever keep on top of it all. So what I'm trying to get at is, like, I play Dory.
Yeah.
I have a couple of other decks.
You can only play Dory if you want to until we get to Living Legend. That's fine.
I have that choice, right? And lucky for me, it's more in the meta than it was before. So I'm in like my element now. The issue is you get new players, but also players on a tighter budget that go, I don't want to have to every set buy a crap load of new. Like, yes, I might have to buy a couple of cards to make my deck better, but the minute you're forcing players, you'll lose a lot of casual players. Like, if you're forcing players to every meta have to start on a new hero, like Starvo did that. Yep. Look what happened. Everyone went and jumped on Starvo, and then a lot of value of those cards just dropped off the face of the earth as well. And the game's still a business, and you gotta be careful with like hurting the economy too hard by putting too much in or taking too much out.
That'll change with Living Legend, trust me. Living Legend format, or whatever it's going to be called.
If people take it. Like, they're printing a lot of UPF stuff.
Yes.
In our local, there's zero absorption of that. So you also can't assume that people will jump on Living Legend, because if my local doesn't play Living Legend, you know what I mean? Like, if I can't go to a Living Legend format armory.
Yeah. It goes both ways though, because I think, as a business, like, I think Tales of Aria in particular was like a really bold move, I think, from LSS to print a set where they go, here's a set, and then you look at it and you go, wow, there's like no generics in the set, and it's like, yeah, you don't actually have to buy the set if you don't want to, and that's, as a business, like, the complaint I think comes from Magic, because they are run as corporate as it gets when it comes to a trading card game, and they want people to buy basically every single product, and that pushes a lot of people out for burnout and things like that, and that could happen in Fish and Blood, and the inverse could happen as well. We go, it's too stale, it's too fresh. It is such a balancing act. There's always going to be critics. There's always going to be you're never going to be able to get perfect, but the job for LSS is to get it as best as possible for the best player experience and for the best wider community experience. And ultimately, yes, the competitive player is a big part of the pillars of LSS and where they want to take the game. But the casual players are going to continue to grow the game. You don't make money off the
competitive players.
Not really.
You don't even play foils in your deck. You're literally worthless to LSS.
I buy quite a bit of product, but I'm close to worthless.
You go what I mean, though. To you, like, you're not the competitive players, like the top 100 players in the world, top 500 players in the world, are not where the money comes from.
I disagree. Okay, I heard people say this with even our good friend the Ironback Brendan, who came from WotC's now with LSS. Like, he was working with WotC when they dismantled the Pro Play Club. And the whole reason why they dismantled that club was like, those pros don't bring any money to Magic. And I'm like, I don't think that's true.
That's not true.
Because for every pro there's an army of Timmys behind him. Even though Hayden's might not be spending a lot of his disposable income, he's inspiring a lot of wannabes like me to do that.
That's not the point, but 100%.
Like
100%.
I think and that's what it's hard to track that. It's hard to put a price on that. It's very pie.
All I'm saying is,
finger in the sky sort of thing. But
if you only cater to pros,
like
if your entire game design is around pros, the game fails.
Game's gonna fail.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, Paul. The difference between them is Flesh and Blood is focusing on the pro scene, because they know for every 100 pro players and someone winning 100K at Worlds, there's 10,000 people aspiring to it, or at least wanting to watch it. No, which 100% never ever changed.
But you've got to balance it.
Correct.
But that is the point. If it's not, and this is a classic, goes back to, if you've worked in any kind of field of marketing or something before, or you have any interaction with this, like, if you can't see the ROI, if you can't see the rate of, your rate of return on this, it's probably not. It's not going to get past the line, no matter how good it actually might be, because it's not trackable, and it's not. And that is kind of, I think, an issue that hit Magic when they went through a lot of restructure. But I think LSS understand that, and they know the value of what their pro players bring into the future.
Like, they cut appearance fees. I used to love going to our GPs in Australia, seeing 24 Japanese pros there.
Yeah,
the only reason why they came because they were all getting appearance fees.
Exactly.
And I felt like it was a spectacle.
Yep.
I was like, whoa, all these pros from Japan are coming down with the peasants. You know, they were play testing in the public areas, like doing crazy
Team
stuff.
drafts on Sunday.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
what the hell? This is freaking like I'm the biggest Timmy. I'm a freaking super fan.
You reckon
How good is
us
this?
three could get appearance fees to the next
Oh, I
event?
would love Flesh and Blood to get to a spot where the pros are paid appearance fees to go to callings. Okay, I'm a big believer in that. I would love to see them get paid to show up at these grassroots tournaments, and I'm sure Flesh and Blood will get there. But you know, I'm big into that, like real big into that. And as soon as those appearance fees stop, these pros stop going to GPs. Even the domestic ones in America, they stop going.
Yeah, it sucked. My first ever Magic GP I went to was 2006, I want to say, and it was the first ever New Zealand GP, and it was like, you know, all the big names there. It's like, you know, you know, I don't need to go through more, but the people like Louis Scott Vargas, you know, who like just there's so many, like Olivier Rouel, like people. Someone from France is here, and that doesn't happen if you don't have the structure in place to support it.
Yep.
And those people bring other people in through the door, even if they're not playing the main event. They're there to play, you know, side events or whatever. But they're going to be there. I mean, this is already happening in Flush, and I'm not saying that LSS needs to do the system. It's, you know, that was a structure that came through years and years of competitive play. But even to the point where, you know, at the Pro Tour, I'm watching people go around to their favorite content creators and their favorite pro players and get photos with them, get their signatures, you know, have conversations with them. And that is part of the experience. That is part of the big thing. And you cultivate that through rewarding people for going to these events. What's the likelihood we get a Pro Tour in Australia? The
Low.
game is based in this side of the world, so
Low.
it's not that low. But, you know, someone who is never going to leave Australia to travel to an event, it's not feasible for them, but they like to travel to the callings of in Australia. They're a fan of X player. Maybe they're a fan of someone like a Tariq Patel, right? And then Tariq has incentive to come and play, you know, a calling in Australia or whatever. That's fantastic. Like, Michael Feng and Yuan Ji were in Singapore.
Yeah.
And I just saw people that were like fans of Michael get
Yes.
to have a conversation with Michael, which, you know, that happened because Michael went out of his way to travel to Singapore. But yeah, it's such
No,
a
no,
cool
I
thing.
But you
I
can't
love it.
measure
I love
that.
it.
You can't measure
Exactly,
that, can
you
you?
cannot.
That's
You
the
cannot.
difficult thing.
The way Fab's going now, one thing they're doing very well at the events is the artists. They're clearly doing that for the artists, right? Like they're making sure that there's like the artist in Singapore, Livia.
It's a tangible one though.
No. But that's what. Look, it's a good place to be though, where you know.
It's a good place to start, I would say.
Yes. The second thing is it's the way they're going, like with their cosplay reward, is they're maybe not paying out cash necessarily. I'm sure the official ones
The
are
pro
getting
one, the professional ones,
but the fact that they're giving out promos that are worth money, and if they keep, because that's how Fab is doing the collectability well, that could be all it needs to be. Is if you're X rank and you come, there's this, you know, 1 of 50 promo.
Yeah,
right.
It's the Yu-Gi-Oh model, which has worked, but I think we've obviously seen it dip off, right? In terms of
I'm not familiar, but it feels like while they're a smaller company and can't maybe spend the extra couple of 100,000 or 50,000 per event or whatever it would cost to do that.
Yeah, of course.
They can at least go part way to give product like they do the judges. Even like if you knew you get a case for turning up because you're ranked, it helps because you can pre-sell the case and might cover it.
I'm not taking it back with me.
Look,
I'm saying it's something they might
Mind you,
roll
that
out
was-
over the next decade.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's in any way the expectation.
But I understand
now,
what you're saying because it's that's the best part of those events.
I think the other issue is that we're not quite there yet. Like, we don't have the narratives, and I think this is, you know, don't need to like go into it too much, but I think, you know, coverage, and this is something I know that Brendan is, he's gonna be at Worlds doing coverage, and he's pretty passionate about this. Is that there needs to be more narratives around the people side of the game.
Yes.
You know, the game only goes so far, especially when we're in a format where people, you know, it's like we've seen Starvo on stream 5 times now, but hey, what if we see Starvo on stream one time and it's a Starvo mirror and it's, you know, X person that's really well known versus this person that has, you know, they qualified via an LCQ or something, or the very last pro quest of the season in their country, and, you know, this is their first big performance. You know, those are the things that I think are super exciting. We want to know, and that goes away to growing the people that at some point then become effectively marketing assets for LSS to.
But that
to grow
does
the game.
take time.
Of course it does.
Like Pablo even flirting with becoming Pro Tour champion back to back was an insane story waiting to happen, right? I was rooting for him, even though I'm very happy Michael won. I was like, man, imagine Pablo winning 2 in a row. Like, it's the stories, but they take time.
But what if you know, what if I said to you, so what if we'd built that more through the, and I think this is just feedback.
In the
for us,
coverage,
is
yeah.
What if we'd been following Pablo a bit more? Because there was a point, he was running the tables.
It's like 11-2 or whatever.
Right, he was running the tables. Like he was, looking pretty good on day 2.
Yeah.
Why was there, how
someone with a camera going?
Yeah. How do we get to a floor coverage person?
Yeah,
how do
floor
we get
coverage
to, how do we
is
get to
very
someone
important.
between rounds to we've got Pablo and we're gonna have a chat to him, or hey Pablo, take us through your draft deck from the last round. This is what There's narratives that can be built there, and I think that's feedback.
They did that a bit in Lille with Alex. I think they gave him some of the, but you gotta target it that way. You gotta go, Alex, we want this. You need someone who wants to write the narrative, to be like, we need to talk to him.
Yeah, I think you need the people in coverage who have the experience to do that. I think, and that's what I think.
Spotlight some of the female players, the less known ones. There's 5 of them in the room. Yeah, you know what I mean. That kind of thing is very important. Yeah,
my favorite TCG content ever made, hands down, is Walking the Plains.
Yeah.
Hands down.
It's very well done.
Very well done. I was fortunate enough in the Sydney Pro Tour for MTG to meet Nathan Holt. I think his name, Nathan Holt, the producer, director, and the protagonist in the series, and lovely guy. I spent a lot of time with him, chatting to him during that event, and that really built narratives. That's what that basically Walking the Plains was. Whether it was women in MTG or a certain pro team
following them into an event,
and he'd have a lot of footage from in the homes, and he'd build a story. He'd add comedy and a bit of flair to it and all the rest of it. But they were amazing at building emotion into the game and putting faces behind that. And I think Flesh and Blood will get there. It'll just take time. Yeah. But yeah, simple things that we can start with, like you said, is floor coverage, people with a roaming camera, or just some basic stuff.
Well, to be honest, Paul, if we got permission to have Thunder at Worlds on the LSS table, at the LSS section.
How do you get this Arsenal pass?
You're playing. Yeah, that's the difference.
And Brendan's doing. Is Brendan doing coverage for Worlds?
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I asked.
That's if you don't ask, you don't get.
Correct.
Squeaky wheel gets the oil.
It can start. So here's what I did have a lengthy chat about coverage in general with James when I was in New Zealand. I'm like, man, how hard is it to just give me permission to do nationals? Just say, if I got something from LSS going, we've told the TO you're allowed to stream. Lucky for us, Grand J did a fucking amazing job at the coverage.
It's the one thing they did right. I would say.
Yeah, amazing. No, and that's all we need to say about it. It was amazing. We've already, and everyone knows. Yeah. But the coverage, the guys that were
the commentary was great.
Yeah,
world class.
They put their heart
very
and soul
happy.
into it. Yeah.
Very, very happy. But that's them setting it up, the TO, rather than, which is better, I don't mind who casts it, get some locals, but have it guaranteed at every calling and up. Just even there's nothing stopping us doing skirmishes. It's just you need some. But what I told, but most of the stores won't.
Sure, but I don't think I think I would count I want is I want really high level coverage. I want it to be continuity. I want it to be great production value. Otherwise,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying to James is, if you tell a content creator, because Noah's keen on it too. If there's plenty of us that would do it, the difference is I'm not going to go invest in even packing an extra suitcase with equipment. Yeah. If I don't know that the next 10 events I can stream. Because I'm happy with just the views on my channel. I don't make a lot of money, but it will at least see a return. If I buy some equipment and put a sound, make a makeshift soundproof booth. Yeah. If I had a setup, I don't think it's that expensive. What I was trying to explain to James is you don't need to spend a cent. Giving me something for it would be amazing. But if you just gave me permission, but more or less some exclusivity or some... hey, if you can meet this criteria, this sound quality, it doesn't need to be money. Just make sure the TO has to give me a spot to stream. Yeah. It's done. By the way, in Australia, we have world-class casters. We can get all that done. Just no, we don't have consistency. Yeah. Remember, Nats at RC, we got told the day before, anyone want to stream? I'm like, what? Yeah. It's a shame because that is what helps grow the game, I believe, is... You have these big events. Yeah. That's why I say skirmishes specifically. The Blitz team calling is such a missed opportunity to stream some devs playing. Yeah. There were narratives. There was a team with 2 brutes. There was do you know what I mean?
There was a non-dev team in the top 4.
Imagine that. Good players.
Debatable.
But again, it's early days. And the thing is, we all want, I think, the same thing. See the game succeed. And the coverage is, I think, a big part. Also, just documenting it. being able to go
I
back.
go back and watch old Pro Tours from 2004. You know, like I love the last thing I'll say though is I think that bad coverage can do as much harm as good coverage can do right, and I think that is what LSS are a little bit worried about, and so I completely understand it.
All right, let's take a turn on this. I've got something, this has been burning
The hard
on my
questions
mind,
coming your
Hayden.
way?
No, it's not a hard question. It's something that's really been troubling me, and I'm sure because it's troubling me, it must be troubling
Everyone.
others.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. So, we all talk about tilt, and John said you're pretty much, if not the most consistent player in Australia. Okay, I put that down to your temperament. We talk a lot on, you've spoken a lot about it on Arsenal Pass. I've done it on my channel. Other people have spoken on it. How to deal with tilt, how to deal with salt, how to keep a level head. I want to know not how to deal with tilt. I want to know how to deal with overexcitement, how to squash that white line fever. Because I know for me, sometimes when I think I see that white line, I put the blinkers on and I just boom, and then I get taken out from the side, ankle tapped. I don't see it coming.
Yeah, reckless
I get
swing.
so
So
fixated.
people know what you're talking about. Right
And
now.
I'm so rushed.
You know what's funny? Matthew Folks said that he did that. He nearly
punted the final. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
he nearly punted the final
Yeah.
because he just saw the win, but he didn't see that he could lose.
But I do that
Yeah.
all the time, flesh and blood. I'm trying my best, and it's like, I think I've got the tilt thing not mastered, but I'm kind of in touch with that side of myself. But I don't know how to squash this bloody white line fever and this overexcitement and this impulsiveness to just, shoot from the hip and go for it. And then I realize and I look at my cards and go, why the fuck did I do that? Like what are your thoughts on that? Like how can someone stay composed like you and calm down and just,
First of all, I guess thank you.
I've seen Hayden tilt, by the way.
yeah, I know, but
I think you've got. I think
You
you've
allow
got to-
the
I think you've
emotion.
got to allow something in, right? Because if you have no emotion, like, what are you doing it for?
You also don't want to
know?
win enough.
Right? Like, you've got to have some passion. I think I'm passionate about this game, and sometimes I will let that get the better of me, and but I do try and keep that. I think the first thing you talked about tilt, right? And I think that is, and like how not to tilt and how to be composed. And I think that's something that is I've found that a bit easier to come by, and probably through experience. The other side of it, that's like you're talking about, like the overexcitement and putting the blinkers on and being, just like, there's the line, that's the line, we're off, kind of thing, and then never thinking back. For some reason or another, and I honestly couldn't tell you why, I don't think I've fallen victim to that one as much. So I probably can't speak as much, but I do have friends who have experienced that, and I think a big part of it is. I tell you, I think the biggest one that I find people have in this game, and I think this is what you're talking about, especially if you play someone that you think is better than you, and you sit down across from them, and you talk, you start to find, maybe you're winning the game, and you're like, there's things start to circle around your head, like, I should be winning this game, and then you get distracted, or it's like, you've just got to be like, well, I just play what's in front of me, and then play this line, and all of a sudden you've missed something that was probably obvious if you were playing against anyone else that wasn't person X. And I think the way to dismantle that, I think the way to stay, I guess, a bit more composed is to just treat it like, and this, it's hard, it's easier said than done, I guess, but to just treat
Like
every
an
game,
armory.
maybe not even armory, just to treat every game as if it is the finals of the Pro Tour. Because eventually,
Gotcha.
Eventually,
Just build good
eventually
habits.
it will be.
Yeah.
I think if you have the mentality, but like, for the first 10 games, you might treat your armory, and I'm careful about saying this because I don't want to encourage people to go and start, playing hardball and, going to an armory and treating it like it is a Pro Tour. I think you should never
I think
shark,
I can actually answer this question for you, and I'll tell you why.
Sure, go on.
Have you watched him stream lately?
no.
Okay. No. This is so my one of my talents. It's taken me a long time at 35 to figure out what my talents are. I am very good at. I'm not necessarily someone that'll build a deck, right? But I can, if you talk me through the flow chart and logic, I can pick that up. I get to a high skill level with a lot of things because I can emulate very high skill people that maybe have 20 years experience in it, and I copy what I deem are the best habits there. So I'll explain what I'm trying to say. When you watch Hayden play on Talishar, because he's talking, and I've realized it's teaching me when I stream Talishar about my thought processes, you're going through a logical flowchart out loud. You're going, I see this line. Actually, there's this line. Should I do this or that? And I believe pro chess players do the same, is they don't see every move, but they know that option A, B, C are the closest to perfect, and then they try and figure out from those 15 moves ahead. Like they're not calculating like a computer does. No one can. But you see 4 cards in an arsenal and a tunic. You can see the 2 lines. You actually vocalize that when you stream, which is helping me go, see, this is why he's a better player than me. I usually see 1 line and I fire. That's how I play. Because when there's nothing on the line, I don't overthink
I think you've nailed it.
But when you play, you see the line, and 99% of the time, the first instinct you have, because you are a very good player, is the right one. You always double check, but do I want to block with this? Like you go through it once and you do it in reverse, and then you double check and then you play. Even when it's a Talisha, Rhino game that probably has no benefit to you winning or losing. I think you do that whether it's at an armory or at a Pro Tour. You're just running through the cycle. That's exactly what Roy told us to do.
Yeah.
He just has the same logical thought process. He uses intuition, but he uses the same logic. He tries to see what state the game is in before he does anything. Am I losing? Am I winning? Who has tempo? That's what he's doing.
Well,
if you develop the same questions that work, and someone needs to, I told Roy the same thing, someone needs to actually make this content.
Yeah.
Is like, forget what deck you're playing. What should you be paying attention to? Do they have a tunic? How much can they block with armor? My biggest losses on Dory is I don't count the opponent's armor before I crack courage. Like, it's very simple, but they're not going to give me a reprise. I'll swing for 4, and they block 4 with armor, and I'm like, I'm
falling apart.
Yep. Yeah. Just because I didn't ask a very simple question I should ask on every Dory match. Yeah. How much armor do they still have? Because Dory wins when you don't have armor. Like if I pop off when you don't have armor, you're going to give me a reprise. Like, you understand.
Yeah, you're playing into the same.
I think that's why you're consistent and why you don't white line get excited is because even when you're going to win nationals, you're still having the same loop in your mind.
That's all well and good, John. If I'm sitting in my undies drinking a 2015 Malbec from Argentina playing Talisha, no problem. I can have those conversations with myself. But when I'm X and O in round 5 at Nats and I'm shitting bricks and, I'm getting overexcited and I'm shaking, I'm vibrating, I'm elevated off the chair, I'm levitating.
Out of body experience.
Yeah, and I'm just like, is this happening?
No,
and I just
Paul,
see these lines and I'm like, oh, fucking slam. And then, I pass priority and I'm like, oh, what the,
It's a mix. I actually, do you know what? I think John's nailed something that I've never really thought through in terms of like, no one's ever asked me that question, really. Everyone's always asked the opposite, right? How do you not tell? How do you do this? And I never really talk about the way that I play the game. But when you ask a question like that, and then you said that makes me think, yeah, that's the way I play every single game. And I think it's a bit between that and what I just said earlier about, treat it like it's a Pro Tour final. The reason I said that is not because I think you should go in and play hardball in every game. It's actually so that you train yourself to just feel that every game has equal importance. So that the big game is no more important than the small game. Like, to be honest, I feel the same if I lose a skirmish semi-final than I do my winning into the top 8 at a Pro Tour, because it's the same mentality of I go to an event, I just play every game until I have no games left to play, and my goal each game is to win and to not think beyond that game and not think about the bigger picture. And yes, easier said than done, but I think once you get into it, it came from mistakes on my end of being like, this game's won, what next?
Yeah.
And that's what lost me games. That's what lost me things. And then trying to reevaluate that, and it's just my end thing was, I'm just going to play every game like it's an important game. Like I want to win every game, but let's just play in the game and then worry about the next one afterwards. And I think that is that's it. I won't dive into this, but I said this to someone the other day. I actually said it on a Patreon pod that we did for Arsenal Pass. I hate this mentality of I'm going to 2-1 the pod. You've already given yourself a loss. What's going on there? I just want to draft a 2-1.
You should be asking, how can I 3-0?
Yeah. How can I draft the best deck possible? Don't worry about if it's a 3-0 or it's a 2-1. Like, play each game and then worry about it afterwards. But anyway, that's why I think there's a bit of a conjoint between what John's saying. I think technically there's some things there that probably work for me and allow me to do it.
You've been playing since you were a kid, basically.
Yeah, I guess some of it is ingrained.
Because this is what I see as again, jiu-jitsu example. The kids that are tearing it up in professional jiu-jitsu now started when they were 3. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
It's learned behavior.
But the way they function is they're playing, they're not fighting. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think when I watch you play again, like even at a high level, you don't seem shaky. You're like, there's variables you can't control. And then I think this is also probably why you tilt less than some people, or you're more immune to tilt when you're predictable. Like you, Hayden, are predictable because you're going to do what you usually do.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine you never misplay, but I think asking...
I do all the time.
Yeah, but I think asking... And it's more answering your question,
Watch my
Paul.
streams.
The direct thing I would notice is, I think people like Roy, Hayden... Funnily enough, love you, Phil, but I'm going to call you out. Something Phil doesn't do. Phil plays fast. And then he'll tilt sometimes because he played fast, assuming it's a winnable matchup. He'll block incorrectly.
Or an unwinnable matchup.
Sure. I think you and Roy, the way you talk about the game, and now watching you stream is what showed me that they just asking the same questions. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Doesn't matter who the opponent's deck is. You're just asking, am I playing this perfectly? Is there an option B that's better? Is there an option C that's better? Should I and it's usually a little bit more reserved. Like you're going, you usually err on the side of caution or
To
like if there's a way to have a good turn and not block with armor, you're not. Like a lot of games, you'll end the game. It's like 5v5.
I have defaults that I default to because otherwise I'd be there all day. I set with through lines. I think it's true.
Yeah.
I just go through. I will say that I definitely get nervous. It's not like I don't get nervous, and there's certain players that I will play against and I go, I know this player's better than me. And that, I think initially when I sit down at the table, that's something that I have to tell myself, like, doesn't matter. What do you want to do here? Do you want to win or no matter who it is, you want to win the game either way. And the best way to win the game is to play the best possible game you can play. So doesn't make a difference if you're sitting down in front of you. Just play the game. Easier said than done. Like I definitely still get nervous, especially in spots where it's like I had a win in him for PT1, right, in New Jersey, and sitting down at the table, like I did feel like a little bit nervous, but for some reason at PT New Jersey, I think because I started at 0-1, it settled me so much more, and I just played my games. To be honest,
that's Pablo started 0-2.
Yeah.
And won the thing.
Amazing.
That's the in and of itself the biggest lesson in temperament and mindset. Because you saw him at PT2.
Yeah.
And he's just chill wearing his fucking Havianas or whatever he's wearing. Do you know? No, but he's just... He is definitely not putting any more pressure on himself than is going to happen by the event. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he goes there thinking, I need to win. But I think he sits down and he wants to win and he plays the match and then he walks off. Whether he loses or wins, he already knows he's going to play the next one. And like I said, play all the games, try and win them all.
Yeah,
see what happens.
There's another game after this one, and if it's not another game because the event's over, there's another event after this one.
Yes.
I think this works for some people, and for other people, they've got to put a strategy that might work is I've got to put immense pressure on myself to be able to calm myself down and stay focused and not get outside the game. And that's fine. Like everyone's going to have different strategies, I think. But, to go back to your original question you asked about, I guess, temperament and how to stay in that situation. I think for me, the thing that has worked is what I just talked about. Treat every game the same, and whether that's to treat it like it's an armory, maybe that works for some people, or it's the Pro Tour final, whatever's going to work for you. Ultimately, just don't be a dick, though, if you are going to treat it like
I think you're just thinking about it. It's very good advice, because if you play armories where you're take backs and laughing and right, but if you have aspirations to win a Pro Tour, you probably need to at least keep your good habits.
Yeah.
No, for yourself. I will let a take back happen. I won't ask for one in an armory because I feel like that teaches me bad habits. Like if I miss a tunic in an armory, I let that sit.
Yeah.
I play around it. I don't ever ask.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I'm saying, I think I've played against you. You're not like... You're never an asshole to play against, but you are definitely serious when you play. Like, you'll chat if someone's chatting, but but you're playing. Like, you're not... It's not like blasé, I'm here to socialize. You're usually there to play, is what I'm trying to say.
I would say I think, interestingly, I don't have a particular default setting. Like, I know a few players have talked about this. Like, I know Matt's talked about it, where he's like, I'm looking at my cards, I'm looking at my opponent's face. I've heard other people talk about it. I know good friend Dan, he's like, just want to have the most fun I can playing like my game. I'm actually pretty reciprocal to, I think, how my opponent's energy is. I think I don't really have a default energy. So if I sit down and, at the Pro Tour, I had a couple of games where, very fortunately, the people were like fans of Arsenal Pass and they wanted to chat. That's fine by me.
No, 100%.
And I might say to them at some point, like, sorry, I just need to think about this play, or whatever. And generally at that level, people aren't going to chat during the game, but, you might have a few jokes back and forth, and that's cool. I'm into that. Like, if that's what people want, but also if someone is someone who needs to sit within themselves and play their own game, then I'm also going to respect that and let them do their own thing. I think I'm pretty open to being I'll be myself when I play the game, and there's an extent to which that is, which is, you know, a few jokes, bit of fun. I want to have fun playing, but, you know, I'm not going to talk the whole time. That's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, but I'm also not going to sit there in stone silence and.
No, you're 100%. Like, I've played against you at armories, skirmishes. I don't think we've played any higher events.
Not yet.
Not yet. You've dodged a bullet.
Either I'm scrubbed out or you're scrubbed out. One way or the other.
Look, like you said, it's one event. Like, I don't put the time in to know I'll perform. Like, at the end of the day, you do need to prepare a bit more than I do to consistently do well in events. Like Nationals, I didn't really do much before Nationals. I just went. Other than the drafts we used to do, but that didn't seem to teach me anything because it's just a luck-based format. So,
Oh, here we go.
On that note,
Naughty boy.
No. By the way, that's a look. What I'm trying to say about the draft format, which I'm not the only one that says it, whether it's wrong or right. I'm not saying it's luck-based. There's clearly a draft skill.
yeah,
I feel like
A lot of skill.
the the matchups, the
I got you.
okay.
There's
in a
so
fire
many-
mirror, who wins the dice roll matters more than it should, in my opinion.
Sure.
Just
Everyone's
as
got
a
different-
raw example, right? That's what I'm trying to say. It feels
Yeah.
like there's a little bit too much of that. I love the set. I love
Yeah.
the amount of generics. I love the 3 heroes, the trifecta but 2 talents rather than like Arya with like
three
combinations.
elements,
Yeah. I love Uprising. I
Yeah.
just feel like you can draft the best deck at the table in 03 because of your matchups and dice rolls. That happens more than I'd like to see it happen.
Yeah, I guess.
Like, for instance, we had 3 Icelanders in my pod in Pro Tour Lille, 2 Icelander mirrors. Like, the chance of that happening is very low, but when it happens, it's terrible. It happens.
Uprising is not a perfect format by any stretch of the imagination. If you want to, and I'll just little plug.
Yeah.
If you want to hear myself, Brendan, and Tariq talk about this very thing and the things that we think.
Your most recent pod?
The pod that came out yesterday. Yeah, today.
Excellent podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a lot of fun doing that pod with Tariq because I think Tariq and particularly myself have a few things that we really agree on and a few things we don't agree on, and
It's perfect.
that's the beauty of it. But I will say, Uprising is not a perfect format. We haven't had a perfect draft format yet. I don't think we'll never get a perfect draft format.
WTR closer to perfection than Uprising, in your opinion?
Looking back, so I think if we had a WTR draft at say Worlds, I think things would rear their head about things that people don't like. It's always going to happen, but I think probably a more rounded draft format than Uprising. There's things that are going to tilt people less in terms of the factors. And I mean, just to summarize, I guess something that we talked about was, a big thing for me was like a 15th card, and Tariq's was another class card, probably fixes that whole issue that we have with the format. So
Yeah, it's very close to being amazing.
it's really good,
Yeah.
but there's just there is issues with it, and
To be honest,
sometimes you feel like you have
WTF
no agency.
WTR and probably Arcana's never got to draft it. It feels like Majestics are much stronger than they are in Uprising. Like Uprising Majestics don't necessarily win you the game.
No,
Some of
I like that though.
or force you into a hero.
Yeah.
While
Some of them
WTR,
just
some
bad.
of them were like, oof.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's some of
Crippling
those cards that
Crush.
just, yes.
Yeah,
It's just like you can build a whole deck around that. You hit it, the tempo swing
Yeah.
or the punishing effect of the on hit, which again, which is why Uprising Draft's quite good, is there's so
Bombs.
many choices.
That's what you get.
Yeah,
at.
and I don't personally like bombs, so it's like everyone's got their own
WTR
thing,
has
right?
bombs for
It
sure.
does,
Yeah.
What I like about WTR, and my only and last complaint about Uprising, is that Uprising is 1 weapon hero. Like, WTR had 4 weapon heroes.
Yeah.
So your baubles and like janky cards that you maybe had to draft in
Yeah.
felt more useful. And I do think that's why Fire overperforms, is the ability to pitch a card
it's
into
very
a
good.
weapon.
Yeah.
That like, not that you could give the other 2 heroes a weapon, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Icelander's the second closest to that, where she can generally have a consistent. While Dromai is like, you can absolutely demolish a pod if you draw well or draft well.
Yeah.
But sometimes when that deck, just your hand is actually can't do anything. Like
Yeah.
that can happen.
There's no archetypes in Uprising, and that ultimately is my actual biggest issue with it, is that Welcome to Wraith, I think, is probably not enough variance, I think, and you will notice that probably
Yeah, but Monarch, Tails especially had archetypes, right?
I really like Tails.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I'll say, is I think Tails is
Yeah.
the best draft format so far. But
Because
for
it
competitive.
had 2 different, so it's 6 heroes on technically there was 6 heroes.
Yeah, and there was
Maybe they're
minimum-
not all
minimum
strong.
2 archetypes within each as well, so you had a lot of different combinations. Whereas you've got 3 heroes this time, and you've got 3 archetypes.
Yes.
So,
Dromai, I believe, has 2. Because,
mean-
it's really luck of the draw.
yeah.
Icelander potential. I've seen some good hybrid Icelander builds.
What does hybrid mean? Like a lot of reds?
Attack actions.
Yeah, with attack actions.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think it still inherently plays the same game pattern, and the games are going to end the same, which revolves around a blue and but
The strategy, I understand. You're saying like the game plan with your deck.
Yeah.
In Uprising, there's
the
less
nuances aren't there.
Yes,
Like Welcome to Wraith, I think within each hero there's 4, 5, 6 different archetypes, which is fantastic, and that's driven by generics. It's driven by the class.
Well, you had generic combos in Arcane and WTR, right?
You got regurgitating all slog.
Yeah, and even
But sets aside, draft is skill intensive.
I don't know,
this-
but when have I
draft
ever
is
said
skill
it's not? That's
Whoa. Yeah.
I've never said draft isn't
Oh,
skill
come on,
intensive.
mate. You and Phil were ripping bloody draft to
Yeah,
shreds.
Uprising draft.
Oh,
specifically.
no.
If you should take some editing duties from me, just drop in a 2-minute clip right now.
Now.
Yeah.
He doesn't touch the
Yeah.
editing.
I
I'll
know,
find
I
the
know.
clips. Don't you worry.
Yeah, but no.
Have you got a question for Hayden, or can I?
No, go for it.
Are we done on the topic
for
of his mentality stuff?
Go for it.
So just quick
I don't know if I
history.
answered the question. Sorry.
No, you did. No, it's very
generally,
helpful. It's very helpful.
Generally, like listeners should go listen to the Tariq. I haven't listened to it yet, so that's something I will now. If it's talking about draft, your last app, your last pod, and definitely watch Hayden some of the VODs of you streaming. Because if you don't notice it because you're just talking your thoughts.
Yeah.
But most people will be like, oh wait, that's how he's thinking through his lines. It's not a binary or a one-dimensional thing. You're definitely, even though you're probably sure of what you're doing, you double guess yourself, but in a non-nervous way. You just go, you double check. You're always
playing
double checking, but I think that saves you a lot of pain in the future in the game where you like miscalculated by one or whatever.
Things are already figured out. I mean, you'll see me make a lot of misplays in this. It's one thing I've learned is it's friggin' hard to stream and play at an optimal level, which is like. But I feel comfortable with that because I think the appeal to probably me streaming Talasha is my thought process and how I'm approaching a matchup from a game plan perspective. Yes, I might make a couple of misplays, punt a thing here or there because of not being able to fully focus on it. But at the end of the day, you don't stream for a perfect knowledge. It's for some knowledge and entertainment value.
Yeah.
Like you can go and watch, there's some streamers out there who I think are pretty successful, and they're just like, the play is what you're there for. I want to be a little bit of both. Ideally.
Would you watch me streaming my undies drinking a vino?
No, only a Malbec.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're on then. Yeah.
Nice.
I definitely would.
All right.
Give us some brief Hayden Dale history. So I know a little bit about it. You believe grew up in New Zealand?
I did.
Talk to us like in the sphere of gaming, cardboard. Like where did you
Well,
start?
whereabouts in New Zealand again?
So I was born in a small town called New Plymouth in Taranaki, which is under the mountain, which you know about though.
That's where my wife was born.
Yeah, you know about that under the shadow of Mount Taranaki.
Nice spot.
But Christchurch is where I went to high school and university, everything in New Zealand. So I started playing cards. I think the first card game I was introduced to was Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was in primary school. So it must have been about 10, I think. And I didn't really play it. You didn't play it properly. I had cards and we played the game, but we mostly did what we thought the cards did in the TV show. That's how they worked. So you can stack your deck, obviously. And then I had a friend at primary school at the time who we were kind of playing cards with, and his older brother played Magic, and he was actually he'd just gone to regionals or something and top 8 regionals. I was like, oh, he's like a professional. That's crazy, it's funny. But and then I got into Magic because of that. Moved city to Christchurch down the South Island, and then I didn't know anyone, and I was said to my mum, I was like, I've looked it up. There's this card store. I want to go and play Magic. I want to, this is something I want to do. I'd already enrolled in all the sports and everything, so that part was covered. But I was like, I want to do this. So went and did my first Magic draft.
What's that?
It was it was Cold Snap.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it wasn't the best first experience, but then I think 2 weeks after Time Spiral came out anyway, and I drafted Time Spiral. But I'd been playing for a couple of years at that point, just casually, and then just completely got into it. I think I made my first ProQuest final when I was 13, I think. Pro Tour qualifier,
Yeah,
PTQ,
wow.
PTQ
Impressive.
final. And then just kind of was in the sort of the game, playing, had no money, right? So just played what I could, borrowed, didn't beg or steal, just borrowed what I could from people to to make decks and play in events and stuff like that. Then I think I took a couple of years away from cards because I was a teenager, and I stopped being chubby and got kind of good looking for a little bit, only for about 2 years, and I got ugly again.
That didn't last, did it?
No, I know,
Yeah.
exactly. And did what you do as a teenager, and then went back. Had friends that I've still Daniel Mackay, who's like I test
Dr. Dan.
Dr. Dan Mackay, who I test Flesh and Blood with, is like I think we've known each other now for 15, 16 years, and so always been a good friend. So went back, played card games, but then just just not feasible with like life, sports, university. I ended up going to and then working part time. Just couldn't play events, so just played when I could. Still made some like pro, PTQ finals and traveled to GPs and traveled to other events and stuff, and won some stuff, and then moved to Australia. Stopped playing card games.
When was this? How old were you?
When I moved to Australia?
Yeah, when did you immigrate?
5.5 years ago. So after university. So I finished my master's degree, got a job here, a company I work for now actually, in a graduate program. Then I've just kind of stayed there. Played a bit of Magic to start with because I was like, I have disposable income now. I can actually like play this. And then kind of didn't really have friends. I think friends make the game, to be honest. And so I just kind of walked away from that kind of grinding scene. I don't really know what I did. Now I think about it, when I had spare time, what did I do with spare time? It's a foreign concept at this point.
Were you dancing in New Zealand or here? That's what
only in New Zealand. I was dancing in New Zealand, yes.
Were you high school?
I've danced since I was 13 all the way through to basically I moved to Australia. Okay. Even the first 2 years in Australia, I still competed at nationals for dancing.
Wow.
Back in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Just like commuted back to
awesome.
do it. When flying was reasonably affordable.
That's never going to happen again,
exactly
is it?
Right. Ridiculous. And then then Flesh and Blood just kind of dropped on my lap in
what
October 2019.
Specifically how?
So were you playing Magic, when you were in Australia?
So the first 2 years I did.
What LG, where'd you hang out? Where'd you play?
Good Games Hurstville was my local.
Okay.
But I didn't really I just went to PTQs basically for I think
PPTQs.
with PPTQs at that time for about the first sort of 9 to 12 months. And then I think the last PPTQ I played Ryan Lewis Johns in the semi-final. I was playing, I think, Mardu Vehicles, and then I lost the final to his friend, and then I think that was the last event I played.
I'm sure we're at the same events
We would
together.
have been. We would have been.
100% would have been.
I think I remember some tall dude walking around.
Some scrub playing mill or 8 rack or some dopey
I would have just been
deck.
playing the aggro deck of the flavor du jour of the aggro deck at the time.
You were an aggro man?
Yeah. Nice. The cultured people all are,
Oh, here we go.
Combo aggro, surely. So I guess Flesh and Blood for me, I was at a Magic event actually. I flew back home. The only Magic events I played for the last 2 years before I started playing Flesh and Blood was every year. There's a community member in New Zealand who actually plays Flesh and Blood, Marnie Gardwell.
I know Marnie.
People know Marnie.
Great guy. Big shout out, Marnie.
Yeah, big shout. We got to hang out with Marnie. He was pouring us beers in Singapore.
That
was such a legend.
Great night.
Yeah, very memorable. We've had a couple of very memorable nights through
actually.
Fab so far.
We
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So
More to come.
Friends and card games are all about that.
More to come.
And he used to run this event. It was like usually a cash event, usually sort of like, I think like a couple of $1,000, 5K sort of thing. And I had this, I top 8'd every single one, and I won one of them. And so I would go back every year. And the very last one that happened in 2019, I was playing against Jason Chung, who's one of the developers for Flesh and Blood. And after the game, I was like, what are you doing now? You're not playing Magic Professional anymore. He's like, designing this card game. And he just told me about it. And I was like, oh yeah, sounds fine, I guess. And
you didn't know James then?
I didn't know James.
Yeah,
I mean, I knew him from Magic.
Sure,
I knew
but
of him, not personally. And then I went along to Good Games Hurstville, picked up the Ira decks. Me and my fiance, my partner at the time, were playing, and then we're both like, this game's like low key quite good. And then spoilers come out, it's like, oh, there's equipment, there's cycles. What the heck's a cycle? Because the Ira decks don't have cycles, right? We didn't know about that. And then went along to the first calling, managed to win, and then just haven't looked back since, really. Apart from COVID, obviously, but even through that time, tried to play as much as I could with TCS and was producing content by that point.
Yeah. Do you feel proud, like being a Kiwi, that this game is birthed from New Zealand, very small country, like you must feel incredibly proud. Like I know I would be. I feel proud just being in a close proximity to New Zealand, and I've got my in-laws all being Kiwis. Like I'm always like telling them about it. Like, guys, the best game in the world comes out of your country.
It's even
It's
award-wise, it won.
Yeah, like it's amazing. Like who would have thought? I never would have thought of this. Like, did it come as a surprise? Like,
so you caught me off guard. How excited you got then?
Yeah, sorry, I get excited quite easily, Timmy.
Oh, super proud. I think you can't not be. I think there's a thing called tall poppy syndrome, which I think Australian and Kiwis know very well.
Mm-hmm.
Explain it to the non.
It's basically just not wanting to be too proud of things, right? Not wanting to stand out and gloat about things. Or
It's very prevalent in New Zealand, even
it
more
is.
so.
It is. It's a thing of you don't shout about your achievements. Your achievements are quiet, and
And if someone achieves, you cut them down very quickly.
you come down. Yeah.
That's the tall poppy bit. Yeah, cut the tall poppy
You
down.
cut the tall poppy. Yeah, which is but that's you don't do it because of fear.
It's
of that,
it's
right?
stark opposite of like the US.
Basically, yeah. And I think that has thankfully gone away in the past few years. It's starting to dissipate, I think, but it's still definitely there. But regardless, I think you've got to be so proud. And I think it's a small company doing big, right? And
well, you were in the card gaming circle. There's clearly quite a high. No, but you were playing and at like high level events, as high as they get in New Zealand. Is that, you'd think, why the game was birthed there? Is there's a small community but a high skill level in that community?
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's what I think. I honestly think what it is it's James. It's honestly just it's a passion that he had for card games, and I guess a vision for what a card game could really be based on the history of card games, and I guess, to be honest, the golden era of TCGs, and just happens to be that I think he's a New Zealander, and I think that what that does is it gave him the, there's a big thing in New Zealand of like punching above your weight. I think 5 million people in a country, some of the best sports teams in the world, and I think we're very competitive by nature in New Zealand, and I think that is probably what drove James to have the success, was that partly culture, partly his vision and ingenuity, and of course his kind of his just want to get it done and knew what he wanted to have here.
I find that, the New Zealanders do have incredible imaginations, dreamers, creative types, come up with amazing ideas, but James is able to actualize that, like have that vision and birth it, because I know there's a lot of vision in that country with people. I've been there plenty of times and have a lot of friends there, family, but how he was able to navigate the tall poppies and all the rest of it and actually birth this vision. It's just, I just think it's remarkable.
And being from the bottom of the world and created an international card game, it's different time zones, the logistics.
And during COVID. Yeah.
But I mean, you look at, and I think as a New Zealander, I think the people that I point to, and it's a TCG, I get it. It's, it's not something like, because other people I point to in New Zealand that have, in different categories, but like a Bruce McLaren, someone who just becomes one of the best racing drivers in the world from a garage. There's people like this that start in small places, but they have these big dreams, I think, and being in a small place doesn't stop them from doing it.
Oh, well, he's also been able to do it with local talent.
For sure, yeah.
Like, it's everyone in that company is not an import. They have staff overseas, but the game itself is made in New Zealand.
Like, a lot of the teams,
you know what I mean? They didn't go poach developers and game designers, and they even have Kiwi artists. Like,
which is fun, and they have leveraged the international community, right? Yeah, that's fantastic for the growth.
Sure,
and they should not shy away from that. I
think.
No.
But he's still like, he hires local. He hires local. They've made it happen. Like, it's you get what I mean. It's 100%. They didn't like go get some big CEO who used to work at they've done it with people with different skill sets, but especially during COVID, they had no choice. They might have done it different if they could, but they literally for a long time were shut off.
Yeah, I'm sure
from the rest of the world. Something I was talking about, Alpha Investments. He does his like market updates, Rudy, and he was talking about like how every card game set right now is dropped. Uprising hasn't.
Interesting. Didn't know that. Yeah.
In the US, the prices are still 85 or whatever, which is high, inverted commas. But but the reason I say that is it's the same as what happened during COVID. You might have not seen 200,000 people play Fab during COVID, but the fact that the company didn't die is a sign of growth. Yeah. And now in like what's basically a recession in the US, a lot of card games, a lot of new sets coming out, they're not selling as well. People's disposable income or income in general, but Fab seems, this Fab 2.0 Uprising, the fact that it's the draft format, it is quite fun to play as well.
Uprising's a success. It's a great set. It's probably, in terms of the sets that have come out, it might not be better for some aspects than Monarch, Tales
It's
of
the
Aria.
best set to date, I think.
I think even despite its issues, I think what it's done for the stage of the game we're in, it's been, it's just been phenomenal, I think, and may it continue.
I have two hard-hitting questions for you. You ready?
Go on then.
Best player in Australia that's not called Hayden Dale.
Can I just do the Nick?
Don't
Butcher and just
do a
avoid?
Nick
Oh,
Butcher.
God. It's like getting blood out of a bloody stone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I mean, he's the national champion, so I think Nick has to be one of those names. Probably if I just like throw it, because I think it's really hard, and I haven't played a lot of players recently. Obviously, I got to play some people at nationals, but there's players I've played in the past, so I would say are very good players. I think if I was just like throw, a few names out there for people to think about in terms of who are the best players in Australia, and in my eyes, again, this is my experience. I might have played some other players who are phenomenal players, but Matt Clark, I think is a great player.
He's always at top tables.
Had the pleasure to play him multiple times at events.
I beat him at the
you?
Battle Hardened, because he was on stream, and I got to buy, and I'm like, who's my opponent? Matt Clark. Thanks, Matt Clark.
Battle Hardened on Sunday, yeah. Ended up top 4.
Yes, he topped,
I think Lachlan out of Brisbane is like another player who I've played, and when I played him, I could see that he is good at this game. I think I think personally have to have played against players and see their skill. Like, the Michael story I told at the start, I think those are the kind of stories that...
Yeah, you're not going off... it's people you've played against going, okay, that's impressive. Like,
I mean, those are probably 3. I think Sable was a very good player down in Melbourne,
Yeah.
There is lots of good players in Australia, but I think those are the ones that have probably stood out to me in terms of I've played against them, and there's probably a couple I'm forgetting as well.
Yep. Oh, look, there's plenty. Luke Fletcher was there, and he's 6-0'd on Dory in the CC component. Still, it's funny about Luke and his brothers that, like, Luke is one of the top in the world in XP.
Yeah.
They got in day one at Midian.
Yep.
He hasn't, I don't think he's travelled to any of the big events. Oh, no, that's not true. He did go. He went to PT1.
Yeah.
He hasn't got the accolade of, you know what I mean? But
yeah, he hasn't won something yet, but I'm sure,
No, but you sit in front, you even watch him test. I don't know if you've ever seen Luke Fletcher just play a friendly game with his, with Laura's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Dude, they don't even put non-attack actions on the board. They just go straight in the bin. Like his Steel Blade Supremacy straight in the bin.
Play every game like it's a Pro Tour final,
Even talking to Luke about the game.
Oh, his depth of knowledge is
on
insane.
another level.
He's on another level.
I can. Oh God, yeah.
What I actually think it's people like that who, very very high skill level, but in their life they achieve so much when it's not their focus. Like he plays Fab, but I think life in general, Fab's not the only thing he does, like work and whatever other stuff. And I don't think he tests the way some of the pro players test either. Like he plays in his armories, and Quan Lee kicked my ass twice.
Yeah.
Very good player. Names we always see. Second, not hard hitting question. What would you? Because the Dynasty spoiler seasons technically hasn't started, but we've seen this one wizard card,
Blessing of Serenity.
Yeah. Which I never have an opinion about cards because you don't unless you see the new heroes and other cards that might synergize with that card. Like you just I don't.
It's a supplemental set. This one.
But what are you hoping to see? No, but there'll be new heroes and things that synergize with card.
I think new heroes wise. What am I hoping to see? Well, first of all, what am I thinking we're going to see just based on that? I think we're going to see something similar in terms of
Starvo.
I'm sure we'll see an adult hero that is playable. I think, but I think majority is going to be UPF. It's going to for the hero space, it's going to be Blitz and young heroes. I think
we've seen 2. I think the Emperor. It's still you could argue is maybe not competitive at 15 life without Kano's ability is going to be tough. We'll see.
I don't know. It's so hard without context.
So you think we'll just get one adult hero? That's it?
I don't. I would say in the mold we've seen so far. If you look at Everfest, right, we get Starvo.
And they have confirmed they want to do the Starvo treatment on many heroes.
Because it's so hard. So let's say, the speculation is we get a talented Kano, right? I think just based on...
Because the lore...
yes, sure. Volcor and I think we've seen a name somewhere or something. But... that would make sense, right? But otherwise, how do you do a talented Kano? It's really you can't put them in a what is the terminology now? Like the core set, the draftable sets. If it's not
the subsets are when they're gonna bring out Light Dory or Draconic Kano or whatever. Yes,
which makes the most sense. So I expect we see minimum one adult hero in this vein. But LSS always throw the curveball. This is why I don't speculate. Because
which I think the scariest part is they've shown us 2 heroes already. That's the scary part because
20 heroes. Paul might get his wish.
Imagine that. What was the set with Magic? The Planeswalker set, War of the Spark, where every pack had a Planeswalker.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it was an uncommon plane. It was uncommon Planeswalkers.
Yeah,
I personally just purely looking at. I put a photo of this up. how many cards were in Crew,
Yeah.
how many cards in Everfest,
And how many in this set?
but not just cards, how many Majestics, how many Legendaries. I have a feeling this set has a few heroes in it.
We've
I'm
got
thinking
more-
a
we've
new
got more
class.
classes.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking
no,
a new
no,
class.
new class is confirmed. That's 100%. They said a new class.
Yeah, I'm
We've already
thinking
seen it.
No, we haven't.
no, a new
It's
class.
royal, not
New
it's
class.
talent
No,
No, no,
class. Sure.
they said new class from like that page in the lore book, like Bard. We've
Right.
seen
'Cause we got
Alchemist.
merchant and
Alchemist,
Crucible.
Assassin. I think people are actually thinking it'll be like Assassin Kano or something.
Well, we saw. I think it's probably something like a Cavdane equivalent. So here
Sure,
I'll give you
yes.
my what I want. Right.
Yeah,
Because
what do you- that's
can
what I-
speculate
yes,
until the cows
yeah.
come home because LSS will always.
I think
They'll
step
take
ahead.
it. They'll take the formula and then they do something to it, right? And that's how we've seen Crucible to Everfest in terms of supplemental sense.
We
That's how we've
cannot
seen-
get. You won't guess it till we see
So
it. Yes.
I would like if we're going down a pathway here. It's two paths. There's a Crucible path and there's an Everfest path. I would like us to see
Crew.
I would like it to be closer to the Crucible
Yes.
path because I have problems with cards in Everfest, not power level specifically. I think actually I have some power level issues with Crucible cards to a degree.
Yes.
There's a few in Everfest, but I think what Crucible did of open up avenues of different
Yes.
ways to build and explore and take a hero directionally, whereas Everfest was really about doubling down on a lot of things and
Well, there's a lot of underwhelming cards in Everfest. Maybe
a lot
they
of
just
trash.
haven't seen their heyday yet. No. I think maybe we haven't seen them. But also,
But how
Everfest
disappointing are-
very
how
much
disappointing
felt
are
like
amulets?
a UPF set. It felt like a
it
UPF
did.
set.
How disappointing are the cards, like Amulets be taking up, 20 cards in the set. And I
Unless
think,
we get a kick-ass Alchemist.
sure, and they could
No,
be,
but
they could
but
be great
more
in the future,
likely
right?
to be UPF.
And they could be great in the future, and that's good. But I think Crucible, you had immediate impact, and obviously the card pool's smaller, so I get that. But you just had these cards that were like so interesting, and they enabled a different style of play with like 4 commons from one class.
Yes.
And I think my concern and what I don't want to see is a lot more cards in the set, right? Is I don't want to see a lot more filler because I think Everfest actually was really undercooked for
That's
a
what I
lot of
mean,
heroes.
yeah.
We missed out on stuff, and I think
Everfest did amazing things for Kasai. I know it's Blitz, but like you finally got some specializations
Yeah.
for heroes that, like the Blitz meta became very fun after Everfest.
yeah.
The CC meta got flipped on its head through one
Yeah.
hero.
I think it helped Rhino.
But but it was very yes.
Yeah,
It helped
a little bit.
Dory too. Like there was a couple of things that like Shadow though, for instance, useless. Like
But let's be honest, the classic battles helped a lot more than Everfest did.
that's what I'm on the same page, but more specifically, I want the equipment from Crew in this set. Like I want equipment. I want
That was-
majestic and rare equipment. I'd love to see some, because Courage of Bladehold is
Such an interesting card.
but all of the equipment in Crew nearly is very good for the hero in one way or another.
Yeah, I think you've got to be careful. I think, right, like power level wise,
They're
like
very, very strong.
Galata,
Yes.
there's these cards, but I do think those add so much interest. And
But
I
that's
think
what
that's
I'd
Everfest
rather
lacked
see.
a little bit. So
Yeah,
I
I'd love
don't
to
want to
see
see a
that.
Crucible replica, and I don't quite want to see that power level, but I want to see us go down the pathway of Crucible a little bit more with the flair of interest and different things.
To
And
set people's expectations, I think you have to expect just based on seeing the Guardian UPF heroes.
there's gonna be stuff for that.
No,
Fine.
but you have to assume that there's a good chunk of the set is for Blitz and potentially UPF.
That's fine.
The new class is more likely to be UPF than it
Yeah.
is, because Bard was a new hero as well. It was in the lore book, but it's not really playable in Blitz.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even legal in Blitz, to be honest. Can't remember
I
now.
don't think it is. No, it's not.
But 100%, some of the commons in the set will change how heroes are played.
I just want it to be a bit more interesting than Everfest. I just think Everfest wasn't that interesting. There's some cards that are great for the format.
No,
and-
the set as a whole is underwhelming.
Yeah.
Not saying anything about the art and the first double-sided hero and all that was sick.
great.
The art, like our first impression, we were mind blown when we opened Everfest the first time. Like, yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Would have you preferred to have Dynasty drop 2-3 weeks before Worlds?
Yes.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah,
What-
no,
Flip, yeah, new
What's
meta.
time as far as like getting card availability? What do you think is feasible or reasonable, acceptable? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Yeah, I think this is the challenge for LSS, right? And I think this is probably why Worlds didn't happen. There's some other factors, right? Of venues and timing and stuff. But let's say that LSS could have done it 2 weeks later. I don't even think it's probably the correct decision to do so because the current state of logistics and manufacturing and production is like, you can't even guarantee that set's going to be there. It's such a massive risk. So as much as I would love it, but let's just say perfect world.
Yeah, perfect world.
Perfect world. I think 2 to 3 weeks. I think if you're at the pinnacle of play, and this is something that's, I think I've butted heads with Brendan about quite a bit, is that I wasn't a big fan of like these kind of. I hate this like unannounced ban stuff because I think that's unfair. People can't schedule that. But having a ban announcement 3 weeks before an event is fine if you know it's coming. I think, or 2 weeks before an event is fine.
Because you're testing, but you're also ready to test again or build again.
People have lives. People have schedules, right? You have to be able to. If it's like if I know there's a ban 2 weeks before an event, cool. It's like I will test before. But I'm going to make sure that I structure my life so that majority, I can make more time in the 2 weeks leading up to it.
If you're going to go on a holiday, you're going to go before.
Yeah, as opposed to maybe like, okay, I give myself even amount of time every week for 4 weeks leading to an event. Actually, let's just make sure I've got all these things I need to get done. I've got, work. I take a day off in that second 2 weeks or something to make stuff happen. So I think realistically a 2 or 3 week time window when in a perfect world would work. And maybe in the future when the world's a bit more settled, they can, and at least there's a bit more finality about these sort of things, because you got to remember now we're at the point we've got countries like Finland and it takes longer for product to potentially get there, and any delay could hamper. There's an amazing Scandinavian scene with some some fantastic players, not just people but also great players. Got the pleasure to spend some time with them in the last 2 Pro Tours actually and chat with them, and like small impacts to them can be really big because of just where they are in the world, things like that. So yes, I would have loved to have seen it. Feasibly though, I get it. It's a bit of a loss though. I think.
Look, I don't know if you guys caught this. I think it was the I Have a Fidia channel where James and Chris were on there.
A while ago, right?
Yeah, and they literally, their printer ran out of paper, man, for Uprising. This is not a joke. There's literally the printer's like, you know what, we got a 6-week delay for Uprising.
Yep.
Literally don't have the stock of paper to print on. Because obviously it's got to be specific. Like it's not something where you go buy other paper. Like it's got to be the same as it's always been for a lot of reasons. I do also know that from a priority list, I think people don't understand how much effort it takes to get a set out on time. Because you're not there's the amount of moving parts.
So much.
If you've ever worked with anyone creative, art is never on time. So that's step one. I'm sure their artists are professional and get stuff on time. What I'm saying is you still have to juggle 50 odd artists a set.
Yeah.
All the copywriting and the text on the cards, the testing of the cards. Do you know what I mean?
These are all just one part of it.
But I think what people don't understand is it's probably 80% of LSS's effort gets put into making a set. And then you got the rest of the 20% of resources have to do the logistics of getting it out and events
marketing.
Because 100%. I know from James White personally that this whole thing with not having enough time before events is very high on the schedule. It's just not that easy to fix with the resources they have. Yeah. They don't have a team of 50 people doing organized play. Yeah. If they did, you'd have no issues because they'd literally have one person's job is to just do your booking events and halls. And they're stretched pretty thin. And I think part of it is what we spoke about before is they're based in New Zealand. For years, they haven't been able to hire outside of local. And now that it's open, it's still not quick. I know...
There's teething issues, right?
But it's also just size of the company. They are growing, but they never were able to find enough staff to grow. Testers are hard to find, but what he was saying they're struggling the most with is someone who's got experience in gaming as a marketing exec. Yeah. It's very hard to find.
Yeah, it's very
especially locally. They're happy to look elsewhere, but they couldn't look elsewhere for 2 years.
Yeah.
And marketing is a huge catalyst for growth and
you want to be in the space. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I just would say that I think, all things aside with the sets and stuff, I think it's got to be really high priority on the list if they want to continue to ensure success and growth of OP. That scheduling it has to it just has to get better.
Look, after Australian Nationals there's always stuff they need to be sending a checklist out to TOs.
Running an event is one thing, but scheduling. I mean, I think, and I have spoken.
But that was scheduled terribly too. It should not have been that weekend.
Exactly.
There's a big chunk of our nationals players that were in Lille. Why would we want to rush back after a European?
I didn't want to, but I actually felt priced.
You landed that day, our national champ. You were the reigning champ.
Yeah.
You had to fly in the day of the event.
Don't even ask me
from London or wherever. It was you, London, right?
I came from London.
That's insane.
Anyway,
we'll attribute your performance to that.
I came 14th. Calm down.
Japan and Brazil. You must be pumped for that.
That's super exciting.
That might inject a whole new, hopefully, a whole new stock of high caliber players. Do you expect a big crossover from those entrenched high-level competitive players from other TCGs in those countries to dip their toes into Fab? Are you hearing anything? Have you?
I haven't heard anything, but I can't see it not being the case. South America has traditionally they were for so long had such a strong player base, but they couldn't travel. They couldn't, until Magic famously brought in changing from prize money to flights for Pro Tour qualifiers, and then these players were actually able to afford to be able to come and travel because the flights were just, it was unreasonable, and you saw them like take over. Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa and Magic, one of the most successful players of all time because of that change. Of course, Japan and TCG is just synonymous. So I think from a personal standpoint, I'm more biased. I'd love to go to Japan. Always, but
I'd be on the first event I'm going. Yeah,
exactly. So, but yeah, I definitely expect to see strength come out of that. Those to be great growth regions and do really well with the game.
And do you have a prediction for Worlds as far as not player, not specific, but regions?
No, you can pick a player as well.
What region do you expect to dominate top 16? Do you think the Europeans are going to come out to play again, or do you think maybe the North Americans can come back fighting, or do you think the APAC are going to get up? What's your prediction for top 16? Is it going to be an even spread, or do you think we're going to see another dominant performance from a singular region?
So it's funny, we used to do a bit of a series on Arsenal Pass called Time in the Round where we'd talk a bit more philosophically about the game and just kind of things that were happening. And eventually we had people come on, but eventually, I think so many other content creators have just done it better, like Instant Speed Podcast, you guys, there's other people that are doing that kind of role, and we kind of done away with it and focused on, I guess the bread and butter of what we do. But one of the big things we talked about was, probably 6 months ago, was the future world champion, the first world champion, very well might not be playing the game right now. I think we're in a standpoint now where that is not true. I think we're so close now, right? I think, had you asked me this question 6 months ago, I think you could just toss a ball in the air and say, probably, Europe going to continue to do well. They've established that obviously on home territory in Lille. I fully expect them to, come, and are they going to make it, 3 in a row for European winners? I would say more likely than not. I would say you've got to say they're
look
the
at the leaderboard. Just the leaderboard itself is
top 2 players right now. Limited and Constructor Elo come from the UK.
Yeah,
which 6 months ago people were saying, "Oh, UK is not a good region." So things happen fast as well, but also there's narratives that just aren't true. But regionality wise, I expect Europe to come and do well. I mean, there's still good players in North America. I would say that the future world champion is already probably a player that we at least know or has had some amount of success already, whether that be calling top 16s, Pro Tour top 32 sort of thing. It's not. I don't think it's going to be a player who
he excluded me from that list. Did you hear that?
Did I?
Yeah, you did.
Pro Tour top 64s.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But I don't,
impressive.
I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a player who has maybe won a single pro quest and not gone to any event so far. I think it'll be someone we've seen at these events prior to it. Maybe they didn't have the great results, but they're a good player and people know they're a good player.
Well, on paper, this will be the highest seeded event, as in. So there's people that I think there's people at Pro Tour that won a pro quest with 10 people.
For sure.
Right? But I think Worlds is it's still a little bit open, but it's nowhere near as open as any other events have been.
Probably. So what you can have is someone who just won a nationals over the past 3 weekends, and they could be at the Worlds. And I'd say my
and of course all the people that have bought PTIs, really anyone can
sure. But
go.
My take would be that they're not going to be one of the players that win. So I think that's just how I feel right now.
You're expecting a name we already know,
or at least someone that's known by named players is a very good player. I think at this point.
I also know. I mean, even Roy, if Roy is playing his best game, he could.
Yeah, he's a player that
Nick is the same. If Nick has a good run, he can win.
It's like players that people. So you have known people, and then you have the people that those people know are good players.
Yes,
it's like the old sports thing of they're the marquee player on the team. It's but they know who the good player.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. It's
So play count. What do you think for Worlds? Are we thinking 350, 450?
What was Lille?
360?
Yeah.
Or 380?
And New Jersey was 440 or something?
It was
somewhere around there. It was about 60 or 70 more than Lille. I'd expect it to probably be around Lille. I think it's it's
an easier coast.
Yeah, and I think
most of the world.
A lot of the Asians are going to travel over.
Yes, yeah. So there's a lot of PTIs floating around. And a lot of people have saved their PTI for this, right? So I expect it to be probably between Lille and this will be I would say this is going to be the biggest world championships we have. I think the future world champs I expect to be 200, 250 max, because they're probably going to change the qualification and it's not going to be the spectacle of the first world championship.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Unless the game catapults double, triple the growth. In the
Yeah, but
next
even
few
in
years.
theory, you have less invites, right? Like, there's so many PTIs out in the wild right now that
that are
haven't been able to be
like
cashed
calling
in.
one potentially was
I've got 4, you know, that are just kind of being.
Matt Rogers is like 11 or something.
Yeah, I think he's down to like maybe 6 or something now. He's giving away.
Sure,
But
sure.
there's, I mean, Jason Long has like 5.
Yeah,
or maybe
yeah,
he's
yeah.
used some now. I don't know,
But there's no more, and there's also I think less and less easy ones to get. Like,
I mean, there's very few easy ones to get. I would
yeah.
say.
Well, I think that's gone as well. Like,
yeah.
there were a couple of ProQuests in Australia with like less than 20 people, but
Yeah, I think it was a 12 player.
but the skill level in those rooms is not a typical armory.
But
you know what I mean?
they're not transferable anyway, those ones.
Sure. No, true.
But they're potentially saving someone a PTI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's probably what I think. Yeah. And I mean, player, I don't know. I'll give it a red hot crack. How about that?
Yeah.
You should. I mean, look, you have the skill set to do it. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Do you find that you're not always you don't feel as like, is it you or is it variance that you feel has more to play with how you place?
Oh, me, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think it's to be honest, if I had to attribute it to one thing for me, it's time. I think like having a full-time career, I think makes it very difficult. And I want to produce content. Content is probably the thing I enjoy most now, I think. So
It is a fine balance. We all make content. We always we have this chat is something like tonight. I want to go to an armory, but I want to make content.
Yeah.
It's not that I love one more than the other, and I've already missed the armory. But that's like you do that sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's tough. I think I'm really focused on Worlds, and I think I'm always there to win every single event, and I'm going to put in the maximum amount of preparation. I try to be really smart about my preparation, and I'm trying to be smart about it this time in terms of the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to set myself out the best way possible that I can, given what I have access to with time and things like that, to be ready for Worlds. Is it what other people can put in? No, it's definitely not. Is it the best that I could probably do if I sacrificed other things? No, but I put myself where I can, and
There's a balance.
and we'll reassess after Worlds about. I would love to continue to travel to every, professional event and play as a quote unquote professional player. I think that would be the dream, but I'm nearly 30, like life is happening and got to be realistic about things. So I think my full focus right now is like world champs and then reassess after that.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Hayden, but are we going to start doing some drafts downstairs again?
I hope so.
Prep for Worlds?
I hope so.
Can we squeeze in a
You know
weekly
what?
draft?
Actually, the challenge is
be there.
finding some uprising stock. I need to start looking if we're going to do that.
I've got a couple of boxes.
Sure, but that's the thing. Even
Yeah.
the stores only have a couple of boxes. But I should start looking. Do you actually want that to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll start again then. I think keep the circle smaller, like only people that are really wanting to test for
Sure.
the higher
We're
events.
still recording, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. I don't mind.
Fuck him.
No, Philip Mackay. No, I'm kidding. Love that guy.
Me too.
What else, John? Anything else?
Look, I'm not going anymore, so we can keep going if you like. I remember the story of Arsenal Pass.
Yeah.
And Brandon you commentated an event with Brandon remotely. Is that how?
Yeah, the first, I think it was the second ever Constructor calling, which was a blitz calling in Auckland during basically borders being closed everywhere, so no one could go to New Zealand. But this was February or March 2021. There was a blitz calling in New Zealand, and Sasha Market was working at the time for LSS as the business development manager, and he reached out to me and said, because we've been friends for a little bit through the game, and he said, would you have any interest in doing some commentary for this blitz calling, like doing it remote with myself? And I was like, yeah, definitely. Like, I'm just gonna be watching it otherwise. Like, love to. And then obviously already doing content at the time. And then he said, cool, I've got my friend Brendan, who I worked with for like the first calling. He's going to jump in as well. He hasn't played for like 3 months. He didn't really play through Crucible to start with, and barely played Arcane Rising. And then that's just kind of how we met through that. And rest is history, really. Decided to start the channel and the pod and be friends, I guess. Be friends.
And I've been busy. I haven't watched all your content lately.
Yeah.
But so Brennan's not playing Worlds.
Brendan's not playing Worlds. No, Brendan's on the commentary team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Brendan's always looked at commentary, and that's part of the reason that it's actually, obviously how we met is through commentary to start with, and it's always been something that he's wanted to do, and I guess the games he's been involved with. So I think he was quite involved with Overwatch and things as well. I think Overwatch, and I think since starting the content's always something he's looked at, and he's done it for certain things. Like he did the Realm Games event, I think. He did commentary for that. He's done some other stuff, and he used to do the Flesh and Blood Gauntlet series, which was like when online play was really big. He ran like a weekly like winner box event that they did coverage for and casting. So I think I don't want to speak for him, and I don't know what his future plans are in terms of playing versus commentary, but I think content creation and commentary and being in that world is pretty important to him, I think. Yep. So I'm not really sure what that looks like. He
did allude to that on one of your podcasts maybe a few months ago.
Yeah.
I remember.
That's not a secret.
Yeah. He did allude to the fact that he maybe like wanted to eventually sort of step away from playing at the higher levels, but still be involved in the community. And he thought a great way to do that, because something he really enjoys is commentary. I think he'd be fantastic. I can't wait to hear him commentate. I think he's definitely going to bring something new and spicy to the team.
But see, back to narratives, that I like that Flake is always, I like DM Armada. You know what I mean? Like, Brennan's the same thing. He's a fixture. Like,
people know it.
I'd love to see the same faces. I know it sounds maybe like a bit of a boys' club that way, but it's nice to see people that are in the community that are commentating and they have experience. And
I think you see him, right? And you go, people tune in, they go, oh, I know Brendan from Arsenal Past, but also I know him as a player who's played in the first two Pro Tours and done well.
Well, he's one half of Arsenal Pass. Like, you know what I mean? None of you are simply commentators, or like none of them are.
Everyone has their. I mean, even to the point, like I think
even Flake's playing nationals. I think
he played nationals and he's played, and obviously just a character in himself. Like Brian Gottlieb is probably like the person I want to see on coverage as much as possible. But I also understand that people don't know who he is. He's a mainstay from Magic that's come across, but he's also done work for LSS on development. And I think he is someone who is super passionate about this game and also really understands TCGs. And I think he is super engaging when he's on the mic.
When's he going to bring Jerry T over? That was when I first heard he was coming over. I go, "Where's Jerry? Where's your boy? Bring over Jerry T."
Brian gets annoyed though because he goes, "Come on, what about me? Am I not enough?"
Oh man, I love you, Brian, but me and Jerry go. I've got a soft spot for Jerry.
Tall boys.
I really enjoyed watching Jerry from way back.
It's fun to watch,
and he's gifted as hell. That guy can play bloody magic.
True.
So I'd love to see him rip it up in Fab.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. I know you don't have too much free time. Appreciate you making the time.
I usually can keep talking till the cows come home, but I have been in hospital for 4 days.
Yeah, no,
I feel like I'm about to fall over any second.
Did you work today? You did, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, this is the end of all our days. We'll cut it here. Obviously, check out Arsenal Pass. You should know who Hayden is if you don't. Arsenal Pass on YouTube, Twitter.
Check us out. Yep.
Easily the best competitive content for Fab, I believe. Like you said, other people do some stuff better. Like, I love watching Fabrica with how they edit the gameplay and Mansen and stuff. You know what I mean? But if you want to be on top of meta stuff, you should be a patron. Like, it's like I said, the last episode, if you're talking about the draft and people like Tariq Patel, that's the thing too. You guys have that reach. There's no one I think you could reach out to in the competitive scene and go, we want to have you on and talk about your deck or something, that would not do it immediately.
Just the ones that don't like us.
Who doesn't?
I'm kidding. I don't know.
I think even if someone doesn't like you, Arsenal Pass would be the way to go if you're going to get some.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're just...
Which is why I always ask, when am I getting invited? And I never get a direct answer.
I know, I told you.
What do you tell me? After top 8 something.
Just win something or top 8 something, yeah. With an interesting deck. I mean,
I'll get there before him, so don't worry.
I think for us, we've I think a big thing for us that we really wanted to do, and this is Brendan's thing, was the time in the round stuff with we had a lot of guests come on, and I think, to be honest, it just doesn't really work for us, and I think there's people who just do it better, and we feel like we were doing a bit of a disservice, I think, and so for us it's like the competitive content. We do have some guests come on, like you'd see, like we had Tariq this week.
Yeah, but you're usually bringing in a thought leader that might either disagree with you or bring a different insight,
Generally
right?
what we try and do.
Yeah. By the way, you're doing it right. Because I think having a guest for the sake of having a guest, like our podcast is having the guest, right? But yours
like
is
having conversations.
If you can speak between you and Brandon, get the point across in the best way possible, a third voice is a distraction.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Or a voice of reason. Depends which way you look at it.
Well, but you don't always need a guest to do it right, I think.
Yeah, unless you need them to convince someone that draft is, in fact, the best format in Flesh and Blood.
The most skill-intensive
that's
format.
just, now we're talking subjective stuff, you know.
You
It's
might be, I'm
best,
not.
like, are we talking fun or, yeah. I by the way, I love drafting uprights.
You have to draft the deck. You have to build the deck. You have to play the deck.
And 100% building a deck is not my strong point.
This is the Fire Force.
Constructor.
Yeah, it says the
hey,
Fire-
and I was first to the party. I can bring out the tweet. I was the first one.
was
And my
very early
YouTube videos, I was
no.
banging on about forcing
Newson
fire.
Zhang from LSS fame was the first to that party, and he's ruined it for everyone.
No.
Actually, when's New Zealand Nationals?
This weekend.
Yeah, because
it's
Newson's
tomorrow.
commentating that. We got to
Tomorrow,
tune
yeah,
in.
we're
Yeah, we
Friday
got to
today.
tune in.
So I think the coverage starts about 11:30 or lunchtime our time. I think round one's about
Perfect.
9:30 AM or something their time. So
Get everything done in the morning.
Yep. So you got 3 rounds of CC.
Yeah, I heard Newson's commentating, which I
with
definitely
Mr.
want to.
Classic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's a celebrity cast right there.
It is.
No, New Zealand's ahead of us.
Yeah. So 9 AM their time is 11.
Yeah.
Other way around.
Other way.
Other way around.
It's
You're
9
right.
a.m.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's
Sorry.
like 7 o'clock in the morning we start.
You can tell it's hard,
Jeez,
mate.
Ock, who's
Sorry.
the smartest one on the podcast
me.
now? Bloody hell.
So coverage must start about 7:30.
Okay, so it's early start.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to
I
watch
lived
the
in New
VOD.
Zealand for so long, you know.
Yeah, that's
Forgive
right.
me.
Anything else, Paul?
No, it's
Obviously,
Hayden.
you're
thanks,
alive.
Hayden.
Me on.
Thanks for
Thank
coming,
you.
Hayden.
Thank you.
I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Really, really appreciate it. I always love chatting to you.
Just want to shout out your content as well. You guys do an amazing job. So
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
keep going, and thank you so much.
Thank you. We try. The thing is the balance between life playing
It's tough.
and the friends. See, that's the actual thing. It's not even the game. Half the time it's like, man, I haven't been to Gosford in 2 weeks. I
Want
just
to hang
want
out
to
with
go.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the. But hey, it's whatever we give. I know the community appreciates that. We get comments and stuff, and you know, like, you don't want to be like disappear for 4 weeks while you're playing. It's not a good feeling. You get a question like, are you alive? Are you good? All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe. I think we're at 410, 11, something like that. We'll
Sweet.
probably do a giveaway at 500.
Yeah, why not?
Also, shout out to all our Twitters. If you're looking forward to Dynasty spoilers, I think Twitter is definitely the place to be. It's cleaner than Facebook, so we're all on Twitter. I just hit 1,000. I'm going to do a giveaway.
Ooh.
But find us all on Twitter. The links are below. I mean, I don't, yeah. I just,
me to 1K.
all I do on Twitter is retweet people. I don't really post anything
Yeah,
original.
I just write sentences that miss words and don't make
Or just
sense.
post
You
post
just
pictures of
post
cards.
random cards, and people
They're
think
not
it's
random.
cryptic.
There is a bit of cryptic in there. There's a bit of everything. Sometimes I like the art. Sometimes there's a hidden message.
Yeah.
I'm just going to
Also-
post knick-knack bric-a-brac every day. Thanks.
Who tried to get that started?
I
Was
know
it
what we're
Tariq?
talking about. We love you, Tariq.
Last shout outs to Yazi because he got a spoiler card
Yeah,
this
well
season.
done, Yazi.
Finally, you think he'll actually post content? He's going to post a photo of it. That's
Find out.
Imagine that. He gets this
yeah, he just posts a photo.
sitting on the dunny.
Yeah.
looking
Can
take
of
the- just
VB
take
in the
the cheap-
background in the dunny.
Just take the cheap route and just make Teleshire content.
That's look. It's not that cheap. Like
No, I'm
like I
kidding.
said, I think
Kidding.
it's
I'm
very.
I
It's.
think it's great.
I think it's great for the game. I think I'm loving it. All right, guys. That's it. That's all. We will see you soon.
See you later.
Cheers.